Chapter 487. I always thought you were sensible. Hua Mingguang's tone wasn't harsh, but he sounded disappointed. The mistake he made when he was young could be said to be because he was young and insensible. But now he was an adult. A 30-year-old person should be able to understand things, right? Hua Jinyao, do you think that no one in this family is worthy of your trust? Do you think that no one in this family is reasonable? Hua Jinyao didn't speak. Hua Mingguang sneered. Your mother is strict with you, but is that the reason you respect us? Dad. I didn't mean that. Hua Jinyao might have talked back to Lu Tongjia. But he respected his father and grandpa from the bottom of his heart. You didn't. If you didn't, would you fool your grandpa like that? You know that he's wanted you to marry him for so many years, and you know that he's wanted to have a great-grandson for so many years. Is this how you repay him? Hua Jinyao was silent for a few seconds, then said, Dad, I said that I didn't mean that. You know whether you did or didn't. You're old now, and you have your own ideas. You don't have to listen to the elders. Hua Jinyao pressed his lips together. Su Qingsang looked at him worriedly. She put her hand on the back of his hand and signaled him to stop talking. I think you've been too busy lately. How about this? Let Yifan take care of the Ike's cooperation case. Hua Jinyao suddenly raised his head and looked at Hua Mingguang. Dad, do you know what you're talking about? Of course I do. Yifan's not bad. I believe he can do it. As for you, you should spend more time with your grandpa. Hua Jinyao clenched his fists by his side. There was a trace of sarcasm in his eyes. Let Yifan take care of the Ike's cooperation case. What next? Are you going to give him my position as the CEO? Hua Jinyao, what kind of attitude is that? Hua Mingguang was angered by his words. Don't forget that the Hua family doesn't belong to you alone. It doesn't even belong to me alone. I'm the chairman now. I have the right to arrange your work. Hua Mingguang was nothing more than the eldest son of the family. Therefore, it was only natural that Tianyu Group would be handed over to him after Old Master Hua. However, Tianyu Group didn't belong to Hua Mingguang alone. It was founded by Old Master Hua. As Old Master Hua's other child, Hua Mingliang was also a part of it. Su Qingsang didn't expect so many things to happen just because they didn't want to have a child so soon. She was also stunned for a moment. She turned to look at Hua Jinyao with obvious worry in her eyes. But now that Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia were here, she didn't even know what to say to comfort him. Hua Jinyao stood up. His back was straight. He looked at Lu Tongjia and Hua Mingguang. Finally, he turned to look at Lu Tongjia. Mom, this is what you want, right? He asked Hua Yifan to share his workload. This was the first step. What was next? Weaken his authority in Tianyu Group. Slowly hand over Tianyu Group to Hua Yifan. Hua Jinyao. What kind of attitude is that? Lu Tongjia was angered by his words. You lied to your elders and played us around. You're still in the right, aren't you? Qingsang and I just don't want to have children at this stage, but it doesn't mean that we won't have children in the future. Mom, you really don't have to overreact. Is this a matter of whether you have children or not? This is a matter of the two of you not lying to your elders and trying to fool us. Lu Tongjia glared at Hua Jinyao. I never care about the company's affairs. This is Dad's decision. I think it's a good decision now. You've been acting more and more out of control recently. I think it's time for you to calm down and sober up. Even if your grandfather was here, I believe he would agree. Hua Jinyao clenched his fists so tightly that blue veins popped out on the back of his hands. Looking at the stern look on Lu Tongjia's face, he suddenly smiled. The Ike's cooperation case, right? No problem. I'll go to the company the day after tomorrow and hand it over to Hui Yifan. But Dad, tell me what else you want to give him. It's better to make it clear at once. It'll be too troublesome to hand it over right and left. Hua Mingguang wasn't very angry at first. But now, he was a little angry because of Hua Jinyao's words. Hua Jinyao. Do you think I want to take away your power? Do you think I want to drive you away from Tianyu? Let me tell you, I really just want you to spend more time with your grandfather. If you keep doing this, I really don't mind letting you have more free time. Hua Mingguang never thought that one day he would fight with his son like this. He didn't expect that Hua Jinyao would think of him like this. This realization made him so angry that his whole body began to tremble. You hurt your grandfather's heart like this. Don't you want to spend more time with him? No one forced Su Qingsang to have children. The men of the Hua family married late. But no one urged Hua Jinyao to get married. He chose to get married, and he agreed to have children. Therefore, he couldn't blame his elders for being angry now that he was pretending to be obedient. Hua Jinyao's body stood there motionless, looking a little stiff. Su Qingsang didn't expect things to develop to this point. She gently touched Hua Jinyao's hand and turned to face Hua Mingguang. Dad. I'm sorry. I'm the one who started all this. I didn't want to have children. Jinyao just, enough. Lu Tongjia was annoyed to see Su Qingsang. Stop talking. Don't I know that you caused this? I don't know what you did to coax Jinyao into marrying you. Now you coaxed him to the point that he doesn't even want to have children. Su Qingsang, you're really well educated. She admitted that Su Qingsang didn't handle this matter well, but she didn't understand what Lu Tongjia was talking about. Just as she was about to ask Lu Tongjia what she meant, Hua Jinyao pulled her over. Mom, you don't have to say it. Qingsang doesn't need to coax me. I didn't want children. Okay. I really didn't know that our Hua family had a lover. Lu Tongjia was furious. She stood up and said, since you have so many ideas, then you too can go live your own lives. We elders don't care about you anymore. Lu Tongjia was really angry this time. It was completely different from the past when she was just unhappy and said a few words. She got up and left. Hua Mingguang didn't stay and stood up as well. Before leaving, he gave Hua Jinyao a cold look, with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Suddenly, only Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were left in the living room. Su Qingsang didn't expect things to turn out like this. She turned to look at Hua Jinyao with worry in her eyes. Jinyao, look, it's okay. Hua Jinyao didn't expect the elders to have such a big reaction. He patted Su Qingsang on the shoulder and said, don't worry. It's really okay. I'll explain it to Grandpa later. Old Master Hua wasn't an unreasonable person. It was always okay to explain it to him. Su Qingsang bit her lip, feeling that it wouldn't be so easy to get over it. Hua Jinyao raised his hand and gently flicked her forehead. That's enough. Leave it to me. You don't have to worry about it. Hua Jinyao. Should I tell Grandpa myself? You tell him yourself. Do you want to have a baby now? Su Qingsang blinked her eyes and finally shook her head firmly. Then it settled. Don't worry. Leave it to me. I'll take care of it. Su Qingsang didn't mention it again after he said that. Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang were the only ones eating breakfast that day. It was a lot quieter. After breakfast, Hua Jinyao went upstairs to talk to Old Master Hua. Su Qingsang didn't know what he said, but Old Master Hua went downstairs for lunch. Although he didn't look very good, at least he didn't look as bad as he did in the morning. Su Qingsang wanted to say something to Old Master Hua several times, but in the end, she didn't. The atmosphere in the Hua family was still a bit depressing that weekend. Su Qingsang thought about it for a day and decided to let it go. Some things would take their natural course. As for the baby, she would wait until she was ready to have another one. On one side of Hua Jinyao's office stood a small team of people who worked with him. They were the employees in charge of Ike's this time. On the other side stood Hua Yifan. He looked at Hua Jinyao, who was sitting behind the desk. His face was calm, but deep in his eyes, there was a trace of excitement and joy. Brother. Hua Yifan didn't call him president but brother. He did that on purpose today. I heard from uncle that you are going to hand over the Ike's case to me. Yes. Hua Jinyao saw the smug look in Hua Yifan's eyes, but he didn't argue with him. He turned to look at the people standing on the other side. These are the people in charge this time. They have prepared the documents and information. I will leave the rest to you. If you are not used to these people, you can change them to someone you want. Brother, you are too kind. Hua Yifan smiled. The people you trained are naturally good. I am very relieved. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. He gave the project manager a look. He nodded and turned to Hua Yifan. Vice President Hua, let's talk in your office. Okay. Hua Yifan nodded. When he turned to look at Hua Jinyao, the smile on his face faded a little. Brother, I will leave now. I will talk to you if there is anything else. Since Dad said to leave it to you. You can be in charge. You don't have to talk to me anymore. Okay. I know what to do. After saying that, Hua Yifan left Hua Jinyao's office with the group of people. As soon as they left, Yang Wenchang came in immediately. He looked at Hua Jinyao with some worry in his eyes. President Hua, Hua Jinyao had said a long time ago that he would follow up with Ike's, and it was about to be settled. Chapter 488. It's okay. Hua Jinyao waved his hand. It's just an Ike's case. I've already made the first 80 steps. He'd be an idiot if he couldn't get it done. Hua Mingguang just wanted to give him a blow. He didn't really want to deny his job. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to be the president anymore. Yang Wenchang understood and thought of something else. President Hua, do you remember Xinglua Department Store and Kasong Electronics in Lin City? Yes. Because they had attacked Xiang Kaiping, he had dealt with the two companies. The people there said that the original owners of those two companies have been in a big fight recently. That's a small matter. Ask Zhang Yang to handle it. Yes. Yang Wenchang had the same idea. There's one more thing. What? Your father-in-law. Yang Wenchang paused. What about him? Hua Jinyao only knew that Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue had divorced. He hadn't paid attention to what happened after that. You know, we had a lot of cooperation with the Li Group because of your relationship with the president's wife. Vice President Su was in charge of those things. But now, for some reason, she's been replaced. I just want to ask, what happened after that? Yang Wenchang had been called back by Hua Jinyao to deal with something. In addition, he had been running errands for Xiang Kaiping, so he didn't know that Su Qingsang was Li Qianxue's daughter. Su Qingsang was the illegitimate daughter of the Su family and didn't have a good relationship with Li Qianxue. Su Qinghui didn't want it anymore. Does that mean that we can change some of the terms of our cooperation in the future? No need. We'll stick to the previous agreement. Thinking of this, Hua Jinyao remembered that he forgot to tell Yang Wenchang about Su Qingsang. He briefly told him about Su Qingsang. Looking at Yang Wenchang's shocked face, Hua Jinyao thought of Li Qianxue's reaction after she recognized Su Qingsang. Remember, we'll be working with the Li Group for a long time. Therefore, the cooperation with the Li Corporation should be based on the original terms. Cooperation was a win-win situation. It would be best if everyone could be happy. Yes. I got it. Hearing this, Yang Wenchang understood. Looking at Hu Jinyao's attitude, he knew how to treat Li Qinxue and the Li Group in the future. Su Qingsang had lunch with Li Ting at noon. She had helped Li Ting on duty twice last time. Li Ting had offered to help her, but Su Qingsang didn't think it was necessary. Li Ting was embarrassed and offered to treat her to a meal. Su Qingsang was not pretentious. She was here to build a good relationship with her colleagues. After eating with Li Ting, she wanted to take a walk to digest the food. Li Ting received a call from her boyfriend halfway. She and her boyfriend were still in a relationship, and they would call each other every morning, noon, and night. Su Qingsang saw the sweetness on her face, and there was a hint of envy in her eyes. She married Hu Jinyao directly, skipping the so-called passionate love period. When she was separated from Hu Jinyao, the two of them would talk and video chat every night, but they had never called each other 3 times a day like Li Ting did. Did she like Hu Jinyao? There was no doubt that he liked it. There was no doubt about that. Did she love him? She also loved him, but she always felt that this love was lacking something. But she didn't know what it was. She thought that it didn't matter. She and Hu Jinyao were already husband and wife, and they would spend the rest of their lives together. She would slowly give more of her heart to him, and slowly make herself love him more and more. She thought that it wasn't difficult. As long as she and Hu Jinyao stayed like this, one day, she would love him so much that she couldn't stop. It was good that things were like this now. Li Ting answered the phone, and then walked slowly. Su Qingsang was too embarrassed to stop and listen to the sweet words of the young couple, so she deliberately sped up. However, when she returned to the hospital, everyone had gone for lunch and hadn't come back yet. The emergency room downstairs received another patient. It was a pregnant woman who had fainted, and her condition was unknown. Su Qingsang went down to the emergency room with 2 nurses. Before she reached the bed, she saw Zhang Yichen standing next to it with his back straight. "Hey, it's you." Su Qingsang was a little surprised to see him. Her eyes fell on the pregnant woman on the bed, who had a slightly bulging belly. Dr. Huang from the emergency room saw her coming down, so he pointed at the pregnant woman on the bed and explained the situation. "The pregnant woman has fainted. She is about 20 weeks pregnant. It seems that she has PIH. But the pregnant woman is injured. We'll have to wait for the obstetrics and gynecology department to find out more about her condition." "Okay, I got it." Su Qingsang nodded and signaled the nurse who followed her to push the pregnant woman upstairs for the examination. She turned around and found Zhang Yichen still standing there. She stopped for a second. She glanced at Zhang Yichen with a hint of a joke. "Did someone blackmail you again? Twice in a row. He was too lucky, wasn't he?" "No." Zhang Yichen didn't look as relaxed as Su Qingsang. "I was driving on Haud Road when I saw her being beaten. I got out of the car to stop it, and she fainted." Zhang Yichen didn't mention how he taught the man who hit the pregnant woman a lesson and how the man ran away while cursing. "I see." Su Qingsang remembered that Dr. Huang had said that the pregnant woman was injured. "Okay, I got it. You can go back now. We'll take care of the rest. Are you going to tell her husband to come?" Su Qingsang nodded. "If not her husband, who?" "It seems that the man who hit her is her husband." Zhang Yichen didn't mind telling her the situation. In fact, he heard it when he got out of the car. The man saw him and tried to stop him, but said, "I hit my wife." "It's none of your business." Su Qingsang's expression became more serious. Okay. Okay, I got it. How about this? If there are injuries and it's confirmed that her husband hit her, we'll help her call the Women's Rescue Center. Or if she needs help, we can help her call the police. Okay. Su Qing-sang looked at Zhang Yichen's face, which obviously didn't relax. Are you from Rong City? No. What's wrong? I want to say that if you are from Rong City, they should give you a Good Samaritan Award. Su Qing-sang thought that he should be given a Good Samaritan Award. She had met him 3 times, and he had done a good deed twice. Who else should they give the award to if not him? Zhang Yichen paused for a second. His usually stern face looked a little uneasy, which was rare for him. No need. It's my duty. He was a soldier of the people, so it was his duty to do these things. However, Su Qing-sang misunderstood him. She had always thought that he was a policeman. He was a policeman, so it was his duty to do good deeds. Okay. I'll go check her. Help yourself. Okay. Thank you. Not at all. It's my duty. Su Qing-sang told him what he had just said. Zhang Yichen was stunned for a second. Looking at Su Qing-sang's back, a faint smile appeared on his face again. Su Peijian looked at the office in front of her, dissatisfied. This office was much smaller than her one in the Li group. She thought about Xiang Caiping's villa and this office. She really thought that Xiang Caiping was stingy. Speaking of which, she had been with Xiang Caiping for nearly half a month. Finally, Xiang Caiping let her manage the 2 supermarket chains under her name. Su Peijian thought so, but she didn't know that Xiang Caiping let her rest for a while before bringing her here because she didn't want her to be too tired. Previously, Xiang Caiping thought that she was old and wanted to go to Lin City to find her daughter. The 2 supermarkets were managed by professional managers, and she was only responsible for collecting dividends. Now that her daughter was back, she didn't want Su Peijian to work for someone else. Naturally, she had to take over. She had been working for a long time. Last week, Xiang Caiping brought her here and introduced her to some of the old employees who had worked hard with Xiang Caiping. Later, Xiang Caiping asked those employees to take care of Su Peijian. All of Xiang Caiping's kindness was unnecessary in Su Peijian's eyes. Why did she need those old employees to take care of her? They should take care of themselves first. She was the boss. Since when did those people get to take care of her? Thinking of this, Su Peijian began to feel that Xiang Caiping was stingy again. She still remembered how Li Qianxue was so powerful in the company. No one in the entire company dared to look down on her. Xiang Caiping, on the other hand, was obviously the boss, but she lowered her status and asked the employees to take care of her. Su Peijian flipped through the documents in front of her, feeling bored. These things were too easy for her. Moreover, there were already professionals who had done the important things. However, she was willing to admit that Xiang Caiping had a certain level of economic acumen. Most of the goods in her supermarkets were negotiated with the factories one by one, skipping the distributors. Therefore, the prices were more advantageous than ordinary supermarkets. This was also the key reason why the 2 supermarkets of hers had always been doing well. For example, the documents she was reading now were negotiated by Xiang Caiping herself. They were only supplied to their supermarkets. When she saw a number on the report, Su Peijian was stunned. Then, she called the manager of the purchasing department over. What's with this prosperity? She pointed at the number and glanced at the person in front of her coldly. The manager's surname was Wang, and he didn't look young. He was in his 40s and had been working for Xiang Caiping before. He called Xiang Caiping Sister Xiang. After Xiang Caiping brought Su Peijian here, they didn't look down on her. After all, they were all grateful to Xiang Caiping. At this moment, Manager Wang's gaze fell on the number on the report, and his expression was a little strange. Chapter 489. Su Peijian had worked for the Li Group for 3 years. She had been carefully trained by Su Qinghui before she went to college. Not to mention anything else, she was quite sharp when it came to numbers. It was a piece of cake for her to come up with a report like this. After all, compared to the Li Group, the 2 supermarket chains were nothing. Mr. Su. Manager Wang had been working for Xiang Kaiping and was very close to her. Now that he saw Su Peijian, he didn't look down on her. The boss of Xingxing is he. He set the price last month. He said the price of raw materials increased. Xingxing produced office supplies, and all the paper-related products had increased the price this time. What kind of raw materials can increase the price by 10%? Are you blind? He didn't just mention paper-related products. He also mentioned other products that had nothing to do with paper. How dare you give me such data? What? Did he think she was easy to fool because she was new? Mr. Su, it's not our fault. We've already talked to Sister Xiang, but she said she's been working with him for a long time, so... That's enough. Su Peijian didn't have the patience to listen to these things. Anyway, she was bored and had nothing to do, so she might as well settle this. Help me make an appointment with Mr. He. I want to see him tonight. He might not have the time. Okay. He doesn't have the time, does he? He doesn't care about the sales of our 2 supermarkets, does he? Then don't work with him anymore. I'll tell the other circles in Rong City about what they've done. We'll see who's going to lose face. Hearing Su Peijian's words, Manager Wang didn't insist anymore. He turned around and went to contact the boss of Xingxing for her. He told her that the boss was free that night and asked her to meet him at Xiangshan Restaurant. After entering Xiangshan Restaurant, Su Peijian looked much better than before. Xiangshan Restaurant was almost as good as Chaoan Courtyard in Lin City. He followed Manager Wang upstairs. It didn't take long before He Xingxian arrived. The boss of Xingxing was called He Xingxian. He was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was slightly plump and looked friendly when he smiled. However, his small eyes were shrewd. Su Peijian had interacted with many people in Lin City. She didn't care about such a man. When they met, Manager Wang introduced them to each other. They chatted for a while before sitting down. Su Peijian went straight to the point. She was not in the mood to talk to a man who was nothing to her. Boss I'm a very straightforward person. If I have something to say, I'll just say it. I'm not very satisfied with your company's offer this time. After all, we've been working with Mr. He for a long time. Boss, he doesn't seem to be very kind right now. It's hard to do business now. The price of raw materials has risen, and it's changing every day. There's nothing we can do. Of course, He Xingxian wouldn't give in. Su Peijian's brows furrowed. She was obviously dissatisfied with the situation in front of her. However, no matter how dissatisfied she was, she wouldn't show it on her face. She kept a smile on her face and continued to socialize with He Xingxian. Speaking of which, this was another point that she could not accept. Previously in Lin City, which company did not rush to cooperate with the Li Corporation? When had she ever humbled herself like this? However, He Xingxian looked easy to talk to, but he was actually very shrewd. After talking for a long time without any results, Su Pei really wanted to lose her temper. The waiter began to serve the dishes, and the door of the private room opened. 2 waiters walked in. It was also at this time that Su Peijian saw a flash of a figure outside. She saw it, and so did He Xingxian. He stood up abruptly. Excuse me. He ignored Su Peijian and walked straight out of the private room. Manager Wang had been sitting at the side like a decoration and hadn't said much. However, in the blink of an eye, he also saw the person outside. He looked very familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. President Hua. He Xingxian never expected to meet Hua Jinniao here. When he saw him just now, he ran out very eagerly. President Hua. Hua Jinniao stopped and looked at the man in front of him. He couldn't remember who he was for a moment. You are. President Hua, people of high status have short memories. You don't know me. I'm He Xingxian from Xingxing Office Supplies. I've discussed cooperation with your company before. Tianyu Group had tens of thousands of employees and dozens of branch companies. If they could get the supply of office supplies from Tianyu Group, not to mention the profits, Xingxing would definitely rise to a higher level in Rong City. President Hua, this is my business card. I've contacted Manager Zhang of your company before, but then keep in touch with him. Hua Jinniao didn't need to worry about small things like purchasing office supplies. Of course I wouldn't dare to trouble you, President Hua. He Xingxian smiled flatteringly. But President Hua, when Manager Zhang mentions it, can you seriously consider it? I can guarantee that our company's products are absolutely high quality, and the prices are absolutely reasonable. Alright, I understand. Hua Jinniao had an appointment with someone today, so he really didn't have time to talk to He Xingxian here. Okay. Go do what you need to do. He Xingxian very sensibly stood aside, and the smile on his face became even brighter. He didn't return to the private room until Hua Jinniao's figure disappeared in the private room at the other end of the corridor. Although Hua Jinniao didn't give him a definite answer, being able to see Hua Jinniao today was enough to make He Xingxian happy. So when he faced Su Peijian again, the smile on his face became more sincere. Mr. He. Su Peijian, of course, knew Hua Jinniao, but she still wanted to clarify. Who was that person just now? Is he your friend? Why don't you invite him in for dinner? He Xingxian looked at Su Peijian as if she was an idiot. President Su, you can tell that he is a newcomer, right? Why? Why do you say that, Mr. He? Do you know who that person is? You said that you want to invite him to dinner. Let me tell you, even if the mayor of Rong City wants to invite him to dinner, he has to see if he's in a good mood. Would you do me the honor? Really? Su Peijian pretended to be surprised, and her eyes widened. That good? Of course. He is the president of Tianyu Group. I have never had the chance to meet him in person. If it weren't for a distant cousin of mine who works in Tianyu Group and found a way to help me get in touch with a department manager, I wouldn't even be able to enter Tianyu Group. Seeing that Su Peijian wanted to listen, He Xingxian didn't mind clarifying to her. That person just now is the president of Tianyu Group, Hua Jinniao. He is the eldest grandson of the Hua family, the most powerful family in Rong City. He has always been low-key and rarely appears in public. If I didn't have the chance to meet him before, I wouldn't have met him. So, Mr. He, you are really amazing. Su Peijian's smile was even brighter than before, but there was a hint of calculation in her eyes. I really didn't know that Mr. He had such connections. Next time, I really need to learn more from Mr. He. Being praised by a beauty like Su Peijian, He Xingxian suddenly felt a little smug. Previously, because of Xiang Kaiping, he agreed to sell some products to them at a low price. Later, when Xiang Kaiping quit, he regretted it. That was why he wanted to take this opportunity to raise the price. He didn't expect Su Peijian to be so tactful. Mr. He, let me propose a toast to you. As Su Peijian spoke, He Xingxian poured a glass of wine. As the other party drank, He Xingxian spoke without a trace. Mr. He, are you familiar with this President Hua? I'm not familiar with him. He Xingxian didn't dare to use Hua Jinniao's name outside. The Hua family wasn't something he could afford to offend. But who in Rome City doesn't know about Tianyu Group? Even in the whole country, there are very few people who don't know about it. Only people like you don't know about it. That's true. How can our knowledge compare to Mr. He's? Su Peijian poured another glass of wine for He Xingxian. Why don't you tell me about it, Mr. He? Let me tell you, this Tianyu Group, it's very powerful. He Xingxian wasn't bragging. However, what he knew about Tianyu Group was superficial. Su Peijian already knew what he was talking about when she was in Lin City. However, she was still listening attentively. As she listened, she nodded in admiration. When He Xingxian finished, she looked at him casually. Mr. He, the next time you meet President Hua, can you bring me along? You see, I don't want anything else. I just want to see President Hua's elegance. He Xingxian didn't dare to answer. He wasn't familiar with Hua Jinyao at all. It was only after many twists and turns and a stroke of luck that they managed to meet. We'll see. President Hua is very busy. How can he have time to see you? He Xingxian deliberately belittled Su Peijian. He wouldn't admit that he couldn't get an appointment with Hua Jinyao at all. Su Peijian's expression was very ugly, but she forced herself to calm down. Yes, we are small people. Naturally, we can't meet the big president. But isn't there Mr. He? When the time comes, we can bask in your glory. This flattery made He Xingxian feel very comfortable. He drank another 2 glasses of wine. He waved his hand. What's wrong with that? I'll let you know the next time I go to Tianyu Group. Then I'll thank you in advance, Mr. He. Su Peijian poured him another glass of wine and got down to business. Look, Mr. He, you're such a straightforward person. You don't have to change the price we agreed on with my mother, right? Okay, let's do it the original way. He Xingxian looked at Su Peijian, a great beauty, and his eyes lit up. If it weren't for Manager Wang sitting next to him, he would have reached out to take advantage of her. Su Peijian was disgusted, but she didn't show it on her face. So what if it was Tianyu Group? So what if it was Hua Jinyao? Now that I'm here, some things are different. He Xingxian, who was drunk and blurry, didn't see the scheming look in Su Peijian's eyes. Su Peijian's eyes were filled with a cold smile. Chapter 490. When Hua Jinyao got up in the morning, Su Qingsang turned over in bed. He pulled the quilt up to cover his body. Hua Jinyao watched her wrap herself up like a dumpling. He reached out and pressed her shoulder. You're not getting up. I'm not getting up. Su Qingsang sounded sleepy. She was on the night shift last night, and it was already late when she came back. It just so happened that Hua Jinyao had a business meeting yesterday and came back around the same time as her. He had always been very restrained when socializing outside, but it was inevitable that he would drink a little. Under the influence of alcohol, the two of them fooled around for a while. Su Qingsang didn't have to go to work today, so she didn't want to get up so early. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, who was wrapped in the quilt, and suddenly felt his heart soften. He leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. Then sleep a little longer. Remember to get up for dinner later. Skipping breakfast is not good for your health. Okay, Su Qingsang answered and closed her eyes again. But as soon as she closed her eyes, she opened them again. Hua Jinyao. I'm not going to work today. How about I go see Grandpa? Although old Master Hua wasn't angry about what Lu Tongjia had done last week, Su Qingsang could tell that he was probably unhappy. Su Qingsang knew that old Master Hua was not angry anymore, but she still wanted to explain to him. Hua Jinyao sat by the bed and looked at her. He raised his hand and gently stroked her cheek. Her skin was really good, delicate and smooth. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang turned her face to the side to avoid his hand. Let me ask you, should I pick out a gift for Grandpa? What do you think we should give her? With Old Master Hua's status, he naturally didn't lack anything. However, Su Qingsang wanted to make the old man happy. Of course, she wanted him to like the gift. Hua Jinyao could see through her at a glance. It's okay. Grandpa is really not angry. In fact, he was also one of the people who didn't want to have children. He hadn't thought about becoming a father at such a young age. Lu Tongjia thought too highly of him by saying that Su Qingsang had instigated it. Was he the kind of person who would listen to a woman's encouragement? He also said the same thing to Old Master Hua. Although Old Master Hua was unhappy, he didn't mention it again after hearing the reason. Therefore, Su Qingsang really didn't need to think about these things anymore. Don't think too much, I'm going to work. Hua Jinyao kissed her again and left for work. He said so, but Su Qingsang couldn't just let it go. She had seen Old Master Hua's attitude toward her since she came to Rong City. Since Hua Jinyao didn't want to tell her, she would think about what to give him. Su Qingsang rarely picked out gifts for her elders. In the past, he had only given gifts to Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue out of respect. After they met, Li Qianxue couldn't wait to give her the best. Even Xiang Kaiping didn't know what to give Old Master Li at the moment. Su Qingsang felt a little conflicted. After leaving the department store, he unknowingly walked to a small road behind the department store. When she came back to her senses and wanted to retreat, she seemed to hear something in the alley beside her. Su Qingsang knew that curiosity killed the cat, so she quickened her steps and was about to walk outside. She didn't expect that the people in the alley would come out at this time. There were two men, one with a crew cut. The moment he saw Su Qingsang, his eyes turned cold. His sharp eyes startled Su Qingsang. She instinctively took a big step back. However, when she saw the man behind the bald man, she resisted the urge to run away. The good young man who did what was right. Zhang Yichen was also surprised to see Su Qingsang. He didn't understand why she was here. He glanced at the man with the crew cut and signaled him to go first. The man looked at Zhang Yichen and said, "She heard it." "I didn't hear it." Su Qingsang hurriedly raised 3 fingers and said, "I just got here. I didn't hear anything." Trying to cover up something only made it more obvious, but Su Qingsang really didn't hear anything. The man with the crew cut became even more worried and took a step forward. Zhang Yichen patted him on the shoulder and said, "Go ahead." She really didn't hear it. The man with the crew cut obviously didn't agree with Zhang Yichen's words, but he didn't think too much about it. He glanced at Su Qingsang one last time. His eyes were full of warning, which made Su Qingsang's body tremble a little. Then he turned around and left. Su Qingsang patted her chest. When she saw Zhang Yichen's face, she trembled again. She pressed her body against the wall behind her. It was still early February, and the temperature was very low. Su Qingsang felt sweat on her back. She thought of the few times she had seen Zhang Yichen before, and he had been nice to her, but that was because he did good things. However, there was no rule in this world that said good people wouldn't do bad things. Looking at Su Qingsang's scared face, Zhang Yichen took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Su Qingsang. It wasn't the weekend, and the weather was still cold. There weren't many people in this alley. Su Qingsang swallowed. When Zhang Yichen stood in front of her, she cleared her throat. "Well, I really didn't hear what you said. It was a beautiful misunderstanding." Su Qingsang wanted to explain more, but Zhang Yichen raised his hand. Su Qingsang was startled. She closed her eyes at once. Then she realized that something was wrong. She quickly opened her eyes. Zhang Yichen's hand was placed on the wall beside her. You didn't hear me. Zhang Yichen believed that Su Qingsang didn't hear him. His ears were very sharp. Su Qingsang's footsteps didn't escape his ears. He didn't say anything after hearing someone approaching. So Su Qingsang couldn't have heard anything. However, looking at the woman in front of him, who was no longer calm and composed like she was in the hospital, he had that thought again. The woman in front of him was quite interesting. Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang had her name tag in the hospital, so it was normal for him to know her name. However, this made Su Qingsang even more scared. Sir, I really didn't hear what you said. She tried to calm herself down. She knew that some perverts would get more excited when they saw others scared. Can I trouble you to move aside for a moment? Zhang Yichen didn't move. He stared at Su Qingsang's face and suddenly lowered his head. Su Qingsang became more and more nervous. Zhang Yichen's face was getting bigger and bigger in front of her. She couldn't help but raise her hand to slap him. However, her hand was caught in midair. Zhang Yichen not only grabbed her hand easily, but also successfully made it so that she couldn't break free. Zhang Yichen moved closer to her face again. Su Qingsang was startled. Seeing his face getting bigger and bigger in front of her, she wanted to raise her other hand. However, unfortunately, she was caught by him again. Let go of me. With both of her wrists in his hands, Su Qingsang was at a complete disadvantage. Looking at her surroundings, she really regretted going out alone today. Her phone rang. It was Hu Jinyao. She wanted to answer the phone, but the man was still holding her hand. She tried a few more times, but she couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. Anger rose in her heart. Su Qingsang's voice became colder. Sir, you'd better let go of me. I'm not someone you can afford to offend. Tianyu Group was quite powerful in Rome City, wasn't it? If this man really dared to do anything, she believed that Hu Jinyao wouldn't go easy on him. Really? Zhang Yichen was about to let go. He just wanted to scare the woman. However, her words made him tighten his grip on her hand that he was about to retract. You're not someone I can afford to offend. Do you know what kind of person I am? Su Qingsang clenched her teeth. She had a good impression of this man because he had helped her twice in a row, but now, there was nothing left. Anyway, you're not a good person. Yes. Yes, you also said that I'm not a good person. Since I'm not a good person. Su Qingsang's face turned pale. Yes, ordinary people couldn't afford to offend Tianyu Group. Yes, ordinary people couldn't afford to offend Tianyu Group. That was for companies and ordinary people. However, if the man was a criminal or a bad person, he wouldn't be afraid of her at all. Su Qingsang calculated in her mind. She wanted to pull her hand out, but she found that the man was using his strength very skillfully. She couldn't feel any pain, but she couldn't break free. Su Qingsang's phone stopped ringing. She calmed down. Sir, what do you think about this? Go ahead. You guys are doing this kind of business. Su Qingsang thought for a while and then thought of the word business. Her voice became softer. It's for money. Let go of me first. You can make any conditions you want. Isn't this easier than doing anything to me directly? How do I know that you won't call the police after you agree to my conditions? Su Qingsang clenched her teeth. I'm in your hands now. How can I call the police? That's not necessarily true. Zhang Yichen stared at her face. For example, you said you were going to transfer money to me, but when you arrived at the bank, you called the police. What do you want then? Su Qingsang was angry. Do you want to kill me? I don't think so. Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang with a mischievous look in his eyes. Su Qingsang had a bad feeling. The next second, the man moved his face closer to hers. Su Qingsang was scared. She thought that he was going to do something to her. However, he only stopped his face about 5 centimeters away from hers. He stared at her face, his eyes slightly dim. Woman, curiosity killed the cat. Don't be so curious next time. Su Qingsang didn't dare to move. Looking at the face so close to hers, she had the urge to slap him. Zhang Yichen stared at Su Qingsang's red lips. For a moment, he really wanted to kiss her. However, he didn't like to molest women. He took a step back and let go of her hand. Chapter 491. Under Su Qingsang's guarded gaze, Zhang Yichen slightly curled up the corners of his mouth. There was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Then he took a big step back. But he didn't leave in a hurry. Su Qingsang also knew that she was no match for him. Her body was pressed against the wall, and her hair was a bit messy. Zhang Yichen subconsciously raised his hand, wanting to fix her hair, but when he saw the guarded look on her face, he subtly withdrew his hand. He gave Su Qingsang a deep look, then turned around and left. Su Qingsang kept looking at the man, afraid that he would come back to his senses and try to hurt her. But now she could see it. The man probably knew that she didn't hear anything, and he was just trying to scare her. Fortunately, the man didn't really do anything to her, or she would have died. The cell phone rang again. Su Qingsang's breath was still a bit unstable when she picked it up. Qingsang. What's wrong? It was Shi Mengwan on the other end of the line. I'm fine. Su Qingsang shook her head. After making sure that the man wouldn't come back, she turned around and walked out. You sound a bit out of breath. Are you really okay? No, I just ran into a dog and was scared. Shi Mengwan didn't ask further. She actually wanted to talk to Su Qingsang about something. But when the call was connected, she didn't know what to say. Oh, you rarely call me when I'm at work. What's wrong? What's wrong? Qingsang, I. Thinking of Zhan Hauze, Shi Mengwan was a bit confused. Nothing, I might want to come to Rong City to hang out with you. I want to ask if you welcome me. Of course you're welcome. Su Qingsang couldn't be happier. Okay, I'll see if I'm free in the next few days. I'll arrange the time. Okay. Su Qingsang didn't think much of it. You're free to work anyway. Call me when you're coming, and I'll pick you up then. Okay. Shi Mengwan said a few more words, but didn't tell Su Qingsang what was on her mind. Never mind, she'd talk about it when they met. Throwing the phone aside, Shi Mengwan only felt that her mood didn't improve because of the phone call. Instead, she felt even more confused. What had gotten into her head yesterday? Why did she end up with Zhan Hauze? He clearly refused to admit that he was her dear brother. He clearly had a fiancé. Shi Mengwan, Shi Mengwan, do you want to be a mistress? Since she couldn't think of anything, Shi Mengwan simply stopped thinking about it. The chances of encountering Zhan Hauze recently seemed to be a little high. That was not a good thing. She thought that she needed to go to Rong City to find Su Qingsang. First, she needed to avoid him, and second, she needed to calm down. Zhan Hauze's figure flashed across her mind. Shi Mengwan's heart wasn't just filled with the sweetness of those memories. There was even more bitterness. Her big brother would probably never come back. Su Qingsang looked at the Land Rover parked in front of her and blinked. He turned to look at the person in the driver's seat suspiciously. When she saw that it was Hu Jinyao, she reached out to open the car door. Didn't you drive this car this morning? Hua Jinyao wasn't a person who paid much attention to enjoyment. There were many cars in the garage, but she often saw him driving a Bentley or a Mercedes. There were also sports cars, but Hua Jinyao rarely drove them to the company. This Land Rover was obviously not Hua Jinyao's favorite type. Yes. Uncle's. He went to work. I'll drive it back to the mansion for him. He'll come for dinner tonight, and I can drive the car back then. Uncle. Su Qingsang thought of the youngest son of the great-aunt, Hua Yangshou, whom Hua Jinyao had mentioned when he introduced his family to her. You're not talking about that great-aunt's son, are you? Yes. He's back. He went to his company to look for him at noon, then left in a hurry after receiving a call. He left his car at his company. He asked him to drive it back to the old mansion for him. As he spoke, his eyes fell on Su Qingsang's hand. What is this? Su Qingsang was holding a bird cage in her hand, which was covered with a cloth. It was very quiet inside. Parrot. Hua Jinyao looked at her, then at the bird cage. Don't tell me that you're going to give this to Grandpa. Can't I? Su Qingsang looked at him with excitement. I walked in the department store all day today, but I didn't see anything to give to Grandpa. Later, I passed by the flower and bird market, and I thought it would be good to give him a parrot. This is the best one in the shop owner's shop. It can talk a lot. It's very smart. I've tried it, and it can talk to people. You see, you're often away from home. Isn't it good to give it to Grandpa? Hua Jinyao suddenly laughed. He reached out and rubbed Su Qingsang's hair. His eyes were full of love as he looked at her. Honey, you're so cute. Su Qingsang's hair was messed up by him. She glared at him and said, just tell me if Grandpa will like it. Yes, yes. He'll definitely like it. After Hua Jinyao said that, he laughed again. Su Qingsang had no idea why he was laughing. Hua Jinyao, stop laughing. If you don't think Grandpa will like it, I'll quit. This bird was not cheap. It cost her tens of thousands of yuan. Hua Jinyao stopped laughing. He reached out and put his arm around Su Qingsang's shoulder. He leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Honey, you're so cute. She didn't plan to have a child so early, so she bought a bird for old Master Hua. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang had a feeling that he was laughing at her. Stop joking. Just tell me, does Grandpa not like it? I said, he will definitely like it. Hua Jinyao stopped laughing. He really couldn't tell that Su Qingsang was so talented. Holding back his laughter, he cleared his throat and said, Honey. I suddenly realized that I'm really lucky. Su Qingsang looked at him suspiciously. She instinctively felt that he was being sarcastic. The car stopped at the Hua family's old house. Su Qingsang walked in with the birdcage. When she entered the door, she was a little nervous and couldn't help but look at Hua Jinyao again. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her shoulder and said, Don't worry. Grandpa will definitely like it. Su Qingsang was quite happy when she bought the parrot. But after Hua Jinyao's joke, she began to feel nervous. Old Master Hua was sitting on the sofa, reading the newspaper with his reading glasses on. Seeing them coming, he waved at them. Jinyao, Qingsang, you're here. He saw the birdcage covered with a cloth in Su Qingsang's hand at a glance. What is this? Grandpa. Su Qingsang was still holding the birdcage. Looking at old Master Hua, even if she felt that it was inappropriate, she had to give it to him. Grandpa. I saw this parrot when I passed by the flower and bird market today. As Su Qingsang spoke, she took off the cloth on the birdcage. There was a red-beaked, green-feathered parrot inside, which looked very small and beautiful. It can talk a lot. I think it's quite interesting. So I bought it. It's a gift for you. You can play with it if you're free. After Su Qingsang finished speaking, she found that old Master Hua was looking at her with a strange expression. She was nervous again. She couldn't help but look at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao's lips were pressed into a straight line. It was obvious that he was trying not to laugh. Su Qingsang glared at him and turned to look at old Master Hua. Grandpa, this bird can really talk a lot. And it's all auspicious words. She picked up the bird food that the shop owner gave her and put some in the cage. Say something. The parrot was completely different from before in the shop. It turned its head and ignored Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was depressed. She knocked on the bird cage. Hello. Say something. The bird didn't even turn its head and didn't look at Su Qingsang at all. After she finished speaking, she remembered that the parrot had a name. But what was the bird's name again? Jade, say something. Right. The bird's name was Jade. Su Qingsang thought for a while before she remembered. Jade, hello. Say something. However, no matter how she teased it, the parrot still didn't speak. Hua Jinyao and old Master Hua just watched Su Qingsang tease the parrot. Both grandfather and grandson had restrained smiles on their faces. It was really hard for them. It can really talk. Su Qingsang turned to look at Hua Jinyao. The expression on her face was half embarrassed and half embarrassed. Hua Jinyao couldn't bear to see her like that. He put his hand on Su Qingsang's shoulder and said, all right. Qingsang. If it can't talk, then it can't. It doesn't matter. How could it not matter? Su Qingsang was anxious. It can really talk. Okay. It can talk. Hua Jinyao didn't argue with Su Qingsang. He had a feeling that Su Qingsang had been tricked by the boss. Su Qingsang originally wanted to give old Master Hua a surprise. She didn't expect that the surprise would be gone and it would become a joke. Qingsang, sit down. Old Master Hua also held back his laughter, not wanting to embarrass Su Qingsang too much. If it can't talk, then it can't. Let Uncle Qing take it down. Hang it on the eaves of the back garden. Su Qingsang looked at the arrogant parrot. She really didn't expect a bird to not give her face. Uncle Qing came in and saw the bird cage. For a moment, he didn't understand why there was a bird cage. Uncle Qing, take this parrot to the back garden and find a place to hang it. Remember to feed it. Su Qingsang thought about the precautions that the boss said. Hua Jinyao saw that Su Qingsang was so careful and was a little jealous. No need to feed it. It won't talk anyway. Such a stupid bird. Just starve it for a few days. How could it not starve for a few days to make his wife so embarrassed? Who knew that the parrot, which had been silent, finally spoke? You're stupid. You're stupid. Hua Jinyao, old Master Hua, and the others were all stunned by the sudden voice. Su Qingsang also didn't expect that the bird would speak like this. The parrot didn't seem to be convinced and kept shouting, "You're stupid. You're stupid." Su Qingsang didn't care that it was scolding her. She looked at old Master Hua as if she was asking for credit. Grandpa, look. Look. It really can talk. Ha ha ha. Old Master Hua finally couldn't help but laugh. This granddaughter-in-law was really too interesting. Not only him, but Hua Jinyao also laughed. Su Qingsang blushed because of their laughter. She stood behind Hua Jinyao embarrassedly and didn't speak. What are you talking about? Why is it so lively? The sudden voice was a little familiar. Su Qingsang turned around and her eyes suddenly widened. Chapter 492. Old Master Huo was so happy about the gift that Su Qingsang had just given him. The smile on his face grew brighter when he saw who it was. Yichen is here. Come here. Uncle. Zhang Yichen walked up to Old Master Huo and said, Uncle, long time no see. You're still so energetic. I'm not as energetic as you. Old Master Huo looked Zhang Yichen up and down. He was in his 30s and had a steady aura about him. The muscles and tall figure that he had trained in the army were clearly different from ordinary people. You. The last time your mother came, you didn't come with her. They have their business to attend to. I won't join in the fun with them. As Zhang Yichen spoke, he saw the parrot and the person standing beside it. His expression froze for a moment, and his eyes swept over Su Qingsang's face. Hua Jinyao was standing next to Su Qingsang when she came in. He was taller than Su Qingsang, so he blocked most of her body. When he stood in front of Hua Jinyao, he could see clearly. Jinyao, he already had an answer in his heart, but he couldn't help but ask again. Uncle, this is your niece's wife. Su Qingsang. Qingsang, this is the uncle I told you about. He was Zhang Yichen, the youngest son of her great-aunt. Don't be fooled by his young age, he's already a senior colonel. Hello, uncle. The smile on Su Qingsang's face was a little stiff. She had never thought that she would run into Zhang Yichen again at the Hua mansion, right after meeting him in the afternoon. What was even more unexpected was that he was Hua Jinyao's uncle. Thinking of what he had done to her in the afternoon, which had almost been flirting with her, Su Qingsang suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Hello. After the initial shock, Zhang Yichen quickly composed himself and reached out his hand to Su Qingsang, as if he were seeing her for the first time. Hello. Both Old Master Hua and Hua Jinyao were there, so Su Qingsang had to shake his hand. His palms were larger than Hua Jinyao's, and his palms seemed to be rough. Su Qingsang only held it for less than a second before quickly retracting her hand. Zhang Yichen glanced at her again because of her movement. I didn't come to Jinyao's wedding. I came in a hurry today. He didn't prepare a greeting gift. My apologies. Uncle is too polite. We're all family, so we don't mind these empty formalities. He was such a young man, but he had to call him uncle. In terms of seniority, he was superior to her. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable thinking about what Hua Jinyao had done in the afternoon. But one thing was clear. The other party was a soldier, so he was probably on a mission in the afternoon that he couldn't let her know. Thinking of that, the unhappiness and fear in Su Qingsang's heart dissipated a lot. Yes. I'll make up for it next time. Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang's eyes. From this angle, he could only see her slightly puckered lips. Thinking about the two of them being so close to each other in the afternoon, he felt his throat tighten. He looked at the parrot and then at Old Master Hua. Uncle, you haven't told me what you were laughing about. Here. Well. Old Master Hua recalled the situation just now. A faint smile appeared on his wrinkled face. Qingsang is filial to me and bought a parrot to keep me company. We're trying to make it talk. The parrot didn't know what was going on. After Zhang Yichen came in, it stopped talking again. However, Old Master Hua didn't have time to talk to the parrot. He asked Uncle Qing to take the parrot away, then waved at Zhang Yichen, signaling him to sit down next to him. He liked this nephew very much. Although Zhang Yichen had been in the army most of the time, he would come to see him whenever he was in Rong City. I heard from your mother that you've been promoted to senior colonel. I haven't congratulated you yet. There aren't many senior colonels as young as you. There aren't many, but it's not like there aren't any. Besides, they have to respect my father, so it's not a big deal. You don't need to be humble. No matter how much they respect your father, they still need you to make contributions. You can only be promoted if you make contributions. Zhang Yichen smiled and didn't refute. Su Qingsang looked at Zhang Yichen and thought of the 2 times he had acted bravely for a just cause. She also thought of the fact that he was a soldier, so the unhappiness in the afternoon was gone. At dinner, old Master Hua asked Zhang Yichen to sit next to him. Hua Jinyao sat down between Zhang Yichen and Su Qingsang. Hua Jinyao seemed to be close to Zhang Yichen. From time to time, Su Qingsang saw Hua Jinyao lean over to talk to Zhang Yichen. They talked about things that happened in the past. When Aunt Zhou brought the soup to the table, Hua Jinyao habitually filled a bowl and put it in front of Su Qingsang. This soup is very nourishing. Aunt Zhou made it especially for you. You should drink more. Lu Tongjia and Hua Mingguang were already numb to the fact that the 2 of them would show off their affection whenever they were having dinner. Lu Tongjia's mouth twitched a little. Why was this soup specially made for Su Qingsang? Aunt Zhou had made it because she hadn't been in good spirits these days. Lu Tongjia moved her lips. She wanted to say something, but she chose to stay silent when she saw Zhang Yichen. Hua Mingguang didn't say anything either. After all, they were both tired of seeing this scene. Zhang Yichen was the only one who had never seen it before. He sat next to Hua Jinyao and watched him fill Su Qingsang's bowl with soup and put food in her bowl. This was the Hua Jinyao he had never seen before, and this was the Su Qingsang he had never seen before. He remembered the cunning look on Su Qingsang's face when she faced the blackmailer's family in the hospital. He remembered the mischievous tone she used to ask him if he was being blackmailed again when he sent the family to the hospital. And this afternoon, she was clearly scared but tried to stay calm. She looked at him with a guarded expression. His heart beat faster uncontrollably. He lowered his head and focused on the food in front of him. He clearly knew that she was his niece-in-law, but in those few short meetings, he could not get her image out of his mind. Yichen, how long can you stay in Rong City this time? Old Master Hua's voice brought Zhang Yichen back to his senses. 3 days. Then stay at home. Old Master Hua had spoken. Zhang Yichen wanted to refuse, but he saw Su Qingsang put food in Hua Jinyao's bowl with her chopsticks. Surprisingly, he didn't object. Old Master Hua was very happy. He asked Uncle Qing to clean up the room. Su Qingsang took a shower and found that Hua Jinyao hadn't returned to his room. She called Hua Jinyao and found that he didn't answer. She looked at the time, put on her coat and went downstairs. After asking Uncle Qing, Su Qingsang finally found Hua Jinyao in the Hua family's gym. When Su Qingsang walked to the door, she heard sounds coming from inside. The Hua family's gym was very large. Half of it was filled with all kinds of fitness equipment. The other half was covered with thick mats. It looked like it was for yoga. Su Qingsang pushed the door open and saw Hua Jinyao and Zhang Yichen fighting in the open space that she thought was for yoga. It could be seen that the 2 of them were just exchanging pointers, and not really fighting. Zhang Yichen was good at martial arts, and so was Hua Jinyao. The 2 of them fought back and forth for quite a while. However, Zhang Yichen suddenly started to attack Hua Jinyao with his halberd. He changed his style, and Hua Jinyao changed his style. Su Qingsang didn't know how to fight, but she could see that Zhang Yichen was better than Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao held on for a long time, but in the end, he was knocked to the ground. When his body was pressed to the ground by Zhang Yichen, he gasped and said, "Are you serious? I'm not good at martial arts." Zhang Yichen stood up and reached out a hand to Hua Jinyao to help him up. "You haven't been training lately, have you?" "Yes." Hua Jinyao didn't deny it. I have a lot of things to do in the company. I can't be like you, training in the military camp every day. How can I be compared? He stood up, panted, and punched Zhang Yichen's chest. Damn you. How could you hit me so hard? It hurts like hell. He felt that Zhang Yichen wasn't fighting with all his strength like before. He was about to ask why. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Su Qingsang coming. He immediately became alert. Wife. He quickly walked up to Su Qingsang, grabbed her hand, and said, You see, I've gone too far. It hurts like hell. Su Qingsang gave Zhang Yichen a discreet glance. Then, she looked at Hu Jinyao with concern. Where are you hurt? Here, and here. Hu Jinyao didn't think it was embarrassing to act pitiful in front of his wife. He pointed at several places on his body. Su Qingsang was about to lift up Hu Jinyao's shirt to check, but she stopped when she saw Zhang Yichen walking over. Go back to the room. I'll help you apply some ointment. Okay. Hu Jinyao was satisfied to see Su Qingsang's concern. He didn't care that Zhang Yichen was still there. He leaned over and kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek. In the past, Hu Jinyao had shown affection in front of others, but Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable when Zhang Yichen saw it. Let's go. You don't want to apply the ointment, do you? Yes, of course. Hu Jinyao turned around and waved at Zhang Yichen. Uncle, let's fight again next time. Su Qingsang nodded at Zhang Yichen as a greeting, then left with Hu Jinyao. Zhang Yichen stood there motionlessly. A light fragrance floated in the air. It was Su Qingsang's scent. He saw that Su Qingsang had obviously just taken a shower. The ends of her hair were slightly wet, and there was a light fragrance of shower gel on her body. Even though she had left, the smell still lingered in the air. It gently surrounded him. Zhang Yichen stood there motionlessly. He had grown up in a military camp. Since he was a child, there were no other women around him except for his mother and sister. Those who went on missions with the army didn't count. Most of the women in the military camp were less feminine and more masculine. He didn't have much contact with women like Su Qingsang, but he didn't expect that they would become like this. Chapter 493. When Su Qingsang went upstairs, she found that Hu Jinyao's body was bruised. His abdominal muscles were very strong, but the skin under his clothes was extremely fair. Looking at it this way, the place where he was hit looked particularly frightening. Why is it so bruised? Looking at the more than one bruise, Su Qingsang looked distressed and dissatisfied. Uncle, aren't you being too reckless? He's a soldier, so his stamina must be better. How could he be so cruel? He knew that Hu Jinyao couldn't beat him, but he didn't go easy on him. It was too much. Honey, I'm fine. Hu Jinyao liked to see Su Qingsang worried about him. He didn't take much advantage of me. I'm telling you, he must be injured too. No matter how injured he is, he's not as bad as you. Su Qingsang looked at the two bruises on Hu Jinyao's stomach. She felt distressed. Go take a shower. I'll get the medicine. I'm fine. Hu Jinyao didn't care at all. It's just a minor injury. It'll disappear tomorrow. No. Su Qingsang felt the pain just by looking at it. Go take a shower. I'll ask Uncle Qing to get the medicine. Hu Jinyao couldn't argue with Su Qingsang, so he went to take a shower. When he came out, Su Qingsang was already waiting by the bed with the medicine. After the shower, she found that the bruise on his waist looked even darker. The pain in Su Qingsang's eyes became more obvious. Why did you suddenly think of fighting with your uncle out of nowhere? I told you, it's not a fight. It's a friendly match. Su Qingsang didn't want to argue with him. In her opinion, fighting and friendly matches were the same. The heater was on in the room. Hua Jinyao was bare-chested, letting Su Qingsang apply the medicine for him. Su Qingsang poured out the medicine. As soon as it touched Hua Jinyao, he cried out in pain. Ouch, ouch. You deserve it. Su Qingsang glared at him, but her hands were much lighter. I'll let you continue the friendly matches next time. You don't know. Yichen and I have always been like this. In front of old Master Hua and the elders, Hua Jinyao called Zhang Yichen uncle. They had a good relationship in private, so Hua Jinyao always called Zhang Yichen by his name. Hua Jinyao winked and asked Su Qingsang to apply the medicine. Su Qingsang rolled her eyes at him. I'm serious. Hua Jinyao thought of the time when he joined the army. Do you know? I had been in my great-aunt's army with my uncle at the time. In terms of skill, I admit that I am inferior to him. For someone like Zhang Yichen, who trained every day, to rise from a common soldier to a senior colonel in just over a decade, that wasn't something an ordinary person could do. If he performs another meritorious deed, he'll be promoted again. So, honey, it's not that I can't beat him. It's because he's too powerful. The fate between people was also strange. Old Master Hua was not the only one who liked Zhang Yichen. His relationship with Wei Yifan and Wei Sihai was even better than with Wei Yifan and Wei Sihai. Yes, yes, yes. Su Qingsang couldn't help but increase the strength of her hand when she saw that he was still joking when he was injured. Seeing Hua Jinyao's facial features scrunched together, she seemed to be satisfied. I know you can do it. You don't have to explain. It wasn't like she hadn't seen videos of soldiers training in the army. Hua Jinyao, who stayed in the office every day, couldn't compare with someone who came from that kind of place. Honey. Hua Jinyao was afraid that Su Qingsang wouldn't believe him. I'm serious. Zhang Yichen is so powerful because he comes from a different family. If I were in the army, I'd be better than him. I wouldn't be beaten by him. Do you believe me? Yes, yes, yes. I'll believe whatever you say. It was obvious that she didn't believe him. How could Hua Jinyao let his wife think of him like that? After he finished applying the ointment, he put the ointment on her hand aside. He turned over and pressed Su Qingsang on the bed. You don't believe that I'm better than him? Hua Jinyao narrowed his star-like eyes, full of danger. Stop it. I haven't washed my hands yet. He didn't mind the ointment on her hand. What are you washing? Just apply it on me later. Su Qingsang almost laughed at Hua Jinyao's words, but soon she couldn't laugh anymore. In the morning, Su Qingsang was a little listless. She wouldn't have gotten up if she hadn't had to work today. Hua Jinyao went to exercise early in the morning. Su Qingsang hurriedly put on her clothes and went downstairs. She was in a hurry if she didn't want to be late. When she walked to the corner of the stairs, Su Qingsang yawned. She didn't pay attention to her feet and accidentally stepped on something. She was startled. When she came back to her senses, she immediately tried to grab the handrail next to her. However, there was still some distance between her and the handrail. She was about to fall, but a pair of big hands caught her waist in time. They took her away from the edge of the stairs and put her in a bigger space around the corner. Su Qingsang steadied herself. She patted her chest with lingering fear. When she saw the muscular chest in front of her, she suddenly realized what was going on. Hua Jinyao was working out in the gym downstairs. Who was holding her now? Looking at Zhang Yichen's thick eyebrows and big eyes, she said uncomfortably, "Thank you. I'm standing." Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang and slowly pulled his hand back. He was as tall as Hu Jinmiao. Looking at Su Qingsang's pale face, he felt that he had pulled his hand back too quickly. Watch where you're going. Su Qingsang pressed her lips together. She was a little uncomfortable with Zhang Yichen's lecture. She had never made a mistake like this. What happened today was just an accident. She took a step back and wanted to continue walking downstairs. Zhang Yichen pulled her again. Be careful. The stairs were behind her. Did she want to fall again? Thank you. Su Qingsang lowered her head and thanked him. She took a step to the side to make sure that she was safe and also to get rid of his hand. Zhang Yichen's hand was still on her waist. Now, he let go of it. He subconsciously tightened his grip. His eyes never left Su Qingsang's face. Be careful. I know. Thank you. Su Qingsang didn't say anything to him. She turned around and went downstairs. This time, she lowered her head and stared at the stairs. Zhang Yichen also wanted to go downstairs, so he followed Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang wanted to walk faster, but she felt that it would be too deliberate. She might as well walk like this. She was so focused on the stairs that she didn't notice that Zhang Yichen was very tall and that he was walking behind her. Because of this, he could easily see the marks on her neck from his angle. Even though he wasn't experienced, he could tell that it was a hickey. The marks on the back of her neck could only have been left by Hu Jinmiao. Zhang Yichen's eyes darkened again because of this annoying thing. At the end of the stairs on the second floor, Lu Tongjia watched the scene. She clenched her fists so hard that they turned white. Zhang Yichen would stay in Rong City for 3 days. Therefore, he would stay at the Hu mansion for those 3 days. Because of this, Hu Jinmiao drove to pick Su Qingsang up every day and drove her for more than an hour back to the Hu mansion. The third day happened to be a Saturday. Su Qingsang didn't have to go to work. She woke up early in the morning and practiced Tai Chi with Old Master Hu. After practicing for a while, she had become good at it. However, she didn't use much strength. Old Master Hu kept saying that she ate too little. She needed to eat more. Grandpa, I'm a girl. Please don't say that I don't eat enough. Compared to other people, I eat a lot. You're still too thin. You need to be fatter. Old Master Hu was a little unhappy before, but after hearing his grandson's explanation, he didn't care about his anger anymore. He knew that Hu Jinmiao didn't get along with his mother. Hu Jinmiao didn't want to have children. However, Lu Tongjia blamed Su Qingsang for it. Old Master Hu was old. All he wanted was to keep the family together. He didn't want to worry about these small things anymore. Before Su Qingsang could say anything, she heard "Grandpa, Grandpa" from the eaves in the distance. It was the parrot from before. It didn't want to talk when it first arrived. In the past 2 days, no one had talked to it, so it kept talking. Old Master Hu laughed again. What a noisy bird. He didn't expect Su Qingsang to give him a parrot. That was really a little noisy. Su Qingsang was worried that she had been fooled and that the bird didn't know how to talk. It seemed that she had been thinking too much. Uncle. The sudden voice made the smile on Su Qingsang's face fade a little. She turned around, saw Zhang Yichen, and nodded slightly. Uncle. When she saw Hu Jinmiao, she immediately smiled again. She took a step forward and hooked her arm around his. Finished working out? Yes. Hu Jinmiao nodded. He looked at Su Qingsang with love in his eyes. Zhang Yichen stood next to them, watching them love each other. The way Hu Jinmiao called Hu Jinmiao uncle clearly separated them into 2 different generations. Yes. Zhang Yichen glanced at Su Qingsang, then turned to Old Master Hu. Uncle, what were you talking about? Why did you sound so happy? I was talking about this bird. It's noisy. Old Master Hua thought the parrot was quite funny. You're noisy. You're noisy. The bird usually stayed in the flower and bird shop. It had been trained by the owner to be very smart. Now it was quarreling with people. Su Qingsang couldn't help but want to laugh. However, because Zhang Yichen was standing next to her, she stopped laughing. Hua Ji now couldn't help but raise his hand to rub the top of her head. It knows how to quarrel with people. I don't know. Su Qingsang looked at the bird hanging under the eaves and thought it was quite funny. Anyway, when I tease it, it doesn't talk. But when someone scolds it, it gets excited. Seems like it's a stupid bird. Hua Ji now gave the bird a stare as he spoke. Stupid bird. As expected, the parrot suddenly became angry. It fluttered in the cage and said, "You're stupid. You're stupid. Ha ha ha." This time, both Old Master Hua and Hua Ji now laughed. The corners of Zhang Yichen's mouth turned up a little. He turned to look at Su Qingsang. With this uncle, you won't be lonely anymore. Nice gift, niece-in-law. Chapter 494. Ignoring Zhang Yichen, Su Qingsang only had eyes for Hua Jinyao. Jinyao, let's go eat. I'm hungry. Okay. Hua Jinyao greeted Old Master Hua and Zhang Yichen, then put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist and walked to the dining room. Zhang Yichen turned around to help Old Master Hua. Uncle, let's go eat too. Okay. Old Master Hua didn't think too much. The two of them followed Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang was talking to Hua Jinyao in a low voice. The parrot had made a lot of jokes in the past few days. She had wanted to buy it to say something auspicious. However, it refused to say anything auspicious and was very good at quarreling. She didn't expect it to do that. She even felt embarrassed. Hua Jinyao thought it was funny. It was fun to have a bird like that. Zhang Yichen helped Old Master Hua up and talked to him, but his eyes were fixed on Su Qingsang. He also saw the faint smile on her face when she talked to Hua Jinyao. She wasn't stunning, but her eyes were full of flirtatious charm. Zhang Yichen saw the flirtatious charm unintentionally. There was a faint flame dancing in his eyes. However, that ball of flame was quickly suppressed by him. Zhang Yichen only stayed at the Hua mansion for 3 days, then went back to the army. After Su Qingsang found out who he was, she turned the matter over. She would just treat the previous small conflict as an unintentional act by the other party. She didn't take it seriously. So, when she got off work, she was surprised to see Zhang Yichen suddenly appear in front of her office. It was already time to get off work, and the other doctors had left. There were still 2 doctors on duty in the office. When Su Qingsang saw him, she called him uncle. The other 2 doctors didn't pay attention to her. What's up, uncle? Su Qingsang looked at Zhang Yichen and knew that he had something to say. She picked up her bag and stood outside the office. You're off work? Yes. That's good. Come with me. Zhang Yichen was about to take Su Qingsang's hand when he spoke. She quickly stepped back and looked at Zhang Yichen, her eyes full of disapproval. Uncle, what's the matter? Zhang Yichen looked around, thought for a moment, then added, Can you come with me now? Can I ask for your help? Tell me what's the matter first. Zhang Yichen's voice was soft, but he sounded anxious. It's urgent. I need a doctor. Now, right now. Su Qingsang looked at him from head to toe. Only then did she notice that there seemed to be some inconspicuous bloodstains on his black coat. Those bloodstains were very familiar to her. Her expression suddenly became serious. Do you need tools? Yes. Zhang Yichen nodded. Can you hurry up? Wait for me. She went to the pharmacy, bought some medicine and bandages, and returned to her office to get a full set of scalpels. She moved quickly, spending less than 10 minutes. She followed Zhang Yichen out of the hospital and got into Zhang Yichen's car. After she got in the car, he quickly stepped on the accelerator and sped away. Su Qingsang wasn't used to the speed, but she didn't say anything. She just looked at the scenery outside. In less than 5 minutes, Zhang Yichen and Su Qingsang arrived at an inconspicuous apartment. The apartment was old, and the walls on both sides were mottled. Su Qingsang hesitated at the scene. Looking at Zhang Yichen's serious face, she followed him upstairs and entered the door. Almost as soon as she entered the door, she smelled blood. Save him, hurry up. A man was lying on the bed in the room. Su Qingsang recognized him immediately. He was the man with the crew cut, whom she met in the alley last time. He was shot 3 times. 1 in the arm, 1 in the abdomen, and 1 in the leg. Why didn't you send him to the hospital? Su Qingsang asked. She walked up to the man and started to check his wounds. We can't send him to the hospital. Zhang Yichen didn't explain further. Su Qingsang glanced at him, but didn't say anything. She focused on the man in front of her, who was covered in blood. The wounds on the arm and leg didn't look serious, but the one in the abdomen looked the most serious. The man was lucky. He had lost so much blood and been shot 3 times, but he was still alive. I wanted to take the bullet out for him, but the bullet went in too deep. I was afraid that I might lose control. The wound was in the abdomen, and it was all internal organs. Zhang Yichen was afraid that he might accidentally cause a second injury, so he asked Su Qingsang for help. I've already helped him deal with it first. I just bandaged the wound a little. But I need you to take the bullet out. Got it. Su Qingsang didn't waste any more time. Although she was an obstetrician, she was familiar with stitching wounds. She took off her coat and put it outside, then put all the tools she brought with her on the side of the bed. She bent down, cut open the man's clothes, and started to treat his wound. When she was treating him, she realized that the anesthesia she brought with her was useless. The man had already fainted because of the excessive blood loss. It was fine without anesthesia. He was shot in the abdomen. Fortunately, his internal organs weren't injured. Otherwise, Su Qingsang wouldn't have dared to treat him like this. The bullet barely grazed the man's stomach, almost causing it to perforate. Su Qingsang couldn't help but feel that the man was lucky. She had no time to care about anything else. She quickly took the bullet out of the man's leg, then the bullet in his arm. She took one and stitched the other. She didn't dare to delay. She was afraid that the man would die of blood loss because of her hesitation. Su Qingsang had been a doctor for so many years, and she had stitched the stomach of pregnant women the most. It was her first time stitching a man's stomach. Although it was fresh, she didn't dare to relax at all. Nearly 2 hours later, Su Qingsang finally finished treating all the wounds on the man's arm. After tying the bandage on the man's arm, Su Qingsang felt that her leg was a little numb when she stood up. It was such a cold day, and there was no heater in the room. Her back was covered with a thin layer of sweat. When she stood up, she saw Zhang Yichen, who had been waiting at the door. Su Qingsang's voice was very soft. It's done for now. For now. Zhang Yichen glanced at his comrade on the bed, whose face was still pale. What do you mean? He lost so much blood. Normally, he needs a blood transfusion. But you refused to send him to the hospital. Although I treated him in time, it was still very dangerous tonight. We need to watch him and make sure that he will wake up tomorrow morning. Then, he will be fine. To be honest, the man had been shot 3 times and lost so much blood, but he was still alive. His vitality was quite strong. Thank you. Zhang Yichen understood. What happened next had nothing to do with Su Qingsang. He looked at the man and said, I will take care of him. Su Qingsang nodded. She moved her limbs, and when she met Zhang Yichen's eyes, she put her hands down uncomfortably. Then, if there's nothing else, I'll leave now. I'll drive you. No need. Su Qingsang glanced at the man on the bed. You should take care of him. I'll just take a taxi back myself. After all, the man was seriously injured, and there was no blood transfusion. Su Qingsang wasn't 100% sure that he would be fine. Oh, he lost too much blood. He might have a fever in the middle of the night. Remember, don't let him have a fever. If you really can't control it, wipe his body with alcohol. She had brought alcohol with her to disinfect the wound, so there was still a lot left. She could give it to Zhang Yichen. Okay. I got it. Thank you. Zhang Yichen thanked her with sincerity. He looked completely different from when he teased her in the alley. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable. She walked out of the room, picked up her bag, and left. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. Don't you need to deal with it? Zhang Yichen glanced at her. She had been treating the man's wound, so her clothes were stained with blood. It wasn't a good idea to run out like this. It's okay. I have a coat. Su Qingsang put on her coat as she spoke. In this way, he really couldn't tell. Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. When Su Qingsang's hand touched the doorknob, he called her back again. Su Qingsang. Yes. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. Don't worry. I'm not that talkative. No, I'm also talking about Jinyao. Don't tell him. Su Qingsang turned to look at Zhang Yichen. When she saw the seriousness in his eyes, she nodded. And, thank you. You're welcome. Although Su Qingsang didn't know what they were doing, she could guess a little. Since they wanted to keep it a secret, she wouldn't tell anyone. After leaving the apartment, Su Qingsang stood at the door and looked around. She took a turn and then left the alley. When Su Qingsang got home, Hu Jinyao was already there. He had obviously just taken a shower, and the ends of his hair were still wet. He was sitting on the bed reading a book. When he saw Su Qingsang come in, he put the book aside. His eyes fell on the bags in Su Qingsang's hands. You went shopping? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded and put down the bags. Did you call me? I was shopping and didn't hear you. I just saw you in the elevator. Have you eaten? Hu Jinyao got off the bed and walked to Su Qingsang. He noticed that she had changed her clothes. She wasn't wearing the clothes she had worn this morning. I've eaten. As Su Qingsang spoke, she picked up the bag by her feet and took out a Versace casual suit. It was dark-striped and made of sapphire blue material. She compared it to Hu Jinyao and said, "Try it on." Chapter 495. He looked at her inquisitively, but Su Qingsang didn't seem to notice it. She said calmly, "I saw this suit on you when I was shopping, so I bought it." Su Qingsang wanted to go home after coming out of Zhang Yichen's apartment, but she thought of the blood stains on her clothes, so she decided to buy a new set of clothes. After buying the suit for herself, Su Qingsang passed by Versace and happened to see the casual suit in the display window. The style, the design, and the color made Su Qingsang think it looked good. She didn't know much about brands, but she knew that almost all of Hu Jinyao's clothes were high-end. But that didn't stop her from buying the suit for Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao looked at the eagerness in her eyes, put on the suit, and joked with Su Qingsang. "You're unaccountably solicitous. Honey, did you do something wrong to me?" Su Qingsang reached out and grabbed the front of Hu Jinyao's shirt. "Yeah, I did something wrong to you. I went on a date with a man just now. I was afraid that you would find out, so I bought the suit to please you." Was he the only one who could talk nonsense? So could she. Hu Jinyao stopped putting on the suit, leaned over, and stared at Su Qingsang's face. "Are you angry?" "I was joking. I'm serious." Su Qingsang blinked and looked at him, looking very serious. "I really went out with a man and stayed in the same room for more than 2 hours. Honey. I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you." Hu Jinyao looked at her, leaned over, and kissed her on the cheek, then quickly put on the suit. He was 188 meters tall, and his inverted triangular figure was a standard clothes rack. The royal blue suit made him look especially energetic. Su Qingsang took a step back and looked at Hu Jinyao. "I have good taste, right?" "Of course." Hu Jinyao didn't care how the suit felt on him. He cared about Su Qingsang's feelings. "Thank you, honey." "You're welcome." Su Qingsang smiled and said, "I did something wrong to you. Of course I have to treat you better. Honey." Hu Jinyao held her waist and lifted her up easily. "I told you I was joking. I'm just kidding." Su Qingsang wanted to tell Hu Jinyao about what happened today. However, since Zhang Yichen said that she couldn't tell him, she wouldn't. She didn't know much about the army, but she understood that they had their own discipline. She thought for a long time, but in the end, she didn't tell Hu Jinyao what happened today. Su Qingsang didn't expect to see Zhang Yichen again at the Hu mansion that weekend. It was February in Rome City, and the weather was getting warmer. It had been almost a week since she had helped his friend with his work. Today, Zhang Yichen was wearing a military uniform, which made him look very different. Su Qingsang couldn't help but take a few more glances at him because of his military uniform. Zhang Yichen was handsome as well, but not in the same way as Hu Jinyao. His facial features were more defined, and he had thick eyebrows and big eyes. His tall and strong body made him look energetic. Wearing such a military uniform, he looked like a tall and straight pine tree. Su Qingsang suddenly thought of the news on the internet. Indeed, all the handsome men were handed over to the government. A soldier like that was indeed very handsome. However, as soon as she looked at him, she met Zhang Yichen's eyes. He nodded at her almost imperceptibly as a sign of acknowledgement. Su Qingsang remembered that she had helped him with the wound of the crew cut, and she took it as a gesture of goodwill. She quickly withdrew her gaze and sat across from old Master Hu with Hu Jinyao. As soon as they sat down, Lu Tongjia and Hu Mingguang came downstairs. They didn't get along well with Lu Tongjia, so Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao stood up to greet the two elders. Speaking of which, Su Qingsang's way of addressing Lu Tongjia was really awkward. She should have called her mother like Hu Jinyao. However, Lu Tongjia obviously didn't like it. Su Qingsang had been in Rome City for so long, but she had never called Lu Tongjia mother. Zhang Yichen couldn't help but look at Su Qingsang's face for a while when she heard Lu Tongjia call her aunt. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao didn't notice it. Only Lu Tongjia saw Zhang Yichen's eyes, and her face darkened. During dinner, Su Qingsang found that Lu Tongjia's face was very gloomy. It was as if someone had offended her. Especially when she looked at Su Qingsang, her eyes were as sharp as knives. She didn't try to hide the dissatisfaction in her eyes. Other than dissatisfaction, there were some other emotions. Not only Su Qingsang, but even old Master Hua and Zhang Yichen noticed that. I'm full. Lu Tongjia didn't eat much, but she put down her chopsticks and left early. For some reason, Su Qingsang felt a little nervous. She couldn't help but look at Hua Jinyao, asking him what was going on with her eyes. Hua Jinyao gave her a look to tell her that it was okay. It wasn't the first time that Lu Tongjia had disliked them. Su Qingsang couldn't stop worrying, but it wasn't the time to ask Hua Jinyao. The atmosphere during dinner was very strange. After dinner, old Master Hua asked Hua Jinyao to play chess with him. Zhang Yichen sat on the side and watched. Su Qingsang found it boring, so she told Hua Jinyao and went upstairs. Just like before, Su Qingsang took a shower and read for a while. She found that Hua Jinyao hadn't come upstairs yet. She thought about it and went straight to the gym. To her surprise, Hua Jinyao wasn't there. Zhang Yichen was alone in the gym. He was sitting on the machine and lifting dumbbells. His military uniform had been taken off, and he was only wearing a vest. Su Qingsang could see his overly strong muscles and weak-colored skin at first glance. It was indecent. Su Qingsang was about to leave, but Zhang Yichen had already seen her. Are you looking for Jinyao? He went to the study with my uncle. Oh. Su Qingsang nodded and was about to leave. She thought of something and stopped. She turned around and looked at Zhang Yichen. Is that guy okay? Zhang Yichen had already put down the dumbbells. He stood up and walked toward Su Qingsang. He's fine. Zhang Yichen walked up to Su Qingsang. She didn't know how long he had been exercising. His face was a little red, but he wasn't sweating. He did have a fever in the middle of the night. I did what you told me to do to lower his body temperature. The fever went down, and he woke up the next day. That's good. Su Qingsang was just asking casually. She was relieved to know that he was fine. After all, he was the first non-female patient she had ever treated. She turned around to leave, but Zhang Yichen reached out his hand to hold her hand. Su Qingsang looked at his hand and instinctively stepped back. She stepped back too quickly and tripped over her right foot. Not only did she fail to dodge, but she also fell backwards. The moment she lost her balance, Zhang Yichen quickly caught her. Su Qingsang's body leaned against Zhang Yichen's chest. Su Qingsang quickly stood up with her hands on his chest. Her hands touched his firm chest, and Zhang Yichen's hands were on her waist. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable being so close to him. She took a big step back after she steadied herself. She looked at Zhang Yichen with an unfriendly gaze. Zhang Yichen seemed to know what she was upset about, but his expression didn't change. I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you. No need. Su Qingsang's voice was cold. You already said that last time. Yes. He already said that last time. This time, he just wanted to find an excuse to talk to her again. She was very close to him. The familiar aroma from last time rushed into his nose again. It was her aroma. He moved his toes slightly. He almost wanted to step forward and hold her like he did just now. However, Su Qingsang obviously didn't like him. She didn't even say a word to him. She turned around and left. Her footsteps were a little hurried, and she walked a little fast. Zhang Yichen's eyes followed her back until she disappeared around the corner. He couldn't see her anymore. He stood there and took a deep breath. He felt that the aroma didn't go away. Instead, it made him feel more and more distinct. Su Qingsang, he repeated the name in his heart. He was so focused that he didn't notice that Lu Tongjia was standing in the shadows at the other end of the corridor. Seeing the two of them hugging each other, even though she couldn't hear what they were talking about, it was enough for Lu Tongjia to imagine a lot of things. Her face was dark and cold, and she went up the other end of the passage through the kitchen to her room. Lu Tongjia asked Mrs. Su to go to the spa in the afternoon. Mrs. Su was Su Ruoli's mother. Because the two families had almost become in-laws, they had been in contact a lot. She often saw Mrs. Su. If it weren't for Hua Jinyao's refusal to marry Su Ruoli, their children would have been grown up. This time, it was even worse. She didn't know what Hua Jinyao said to Su Ruoli, but Su Ruoli said she was going abroad to study at the end of last year. She hadn't been home for several months. Mrs. Su didn't like Su Ruoli's behavior, but she knew that it was all Hua Jinyao's fault. However, she didn't even dare to blame Su Ruoli. Who could she blame for her daughter's stubbornness? Now that she had met Lu Tongjia, she had to be polite and polite. They went to the club and accidentally ran into Li Xiangyuan, who was with Yi Xianyao. The mother and daughter seemed to be there for the spa as well. Tongjia. Li Xiangyuan's eyes were full of surprise when she saw Lu Tongjia. What a coincidence. I didn't expect to see you here. Li Xiangyuan was Li Juanqing's aunt. Li Xiangyuan was born in the Li family and married into the He family. She was also He Xiankai and He Xuanyao's mother. The He family was not as powerful as the Hua family, let alone the Li family. However, the Li family had a lot of resources. When Li Xiangyuan married into the He family, it was considered a low marriage. She and Lu Tongjia had known each other since they were young and had a good relationship. It is quite a coincidence. Lu Tongjia greeted her and immediately saw He Xianyao, who was next to her. If she remembered correctly, He Xianyao had taken all kinds of opportunities to come to her house. She also knew that He Xianyao liked Hua Jinyao. Auntie Hua. He Xianyao had always been good in front of Lu Tongjia, and it was the same now. Chapter 496. Didn't He Xianyao visit the Hua family so often because she liked Hua Jinyao? If Hua Jinyao had married He Xianyao at that time, their children would have grown up by now. He Xianyao cared about Hua Jinyao so much that she wouldn't want to have children. Not to mention that Hua Jinyao would coax and flatter her every day. Thinking of this, Lu Tongjia looked at He Xianyao in a different way. He Xianyao felt a little uncomfortable under Lu Tongjia's gaze. The smile on her face froze. Lu Tongjia looked away and said calmly, "Since we met, let's go together. Just put it on my card for today." After the spa, Lu Tongjia suggested that they go for afternoon tea together. It was rare for her to be so interested in the spa. She was more enthusiastic than usual. The other three felt it, but they didn't know what Lu Tongjia wanted to do. After they went to a restaurant in a nearby 5-star hotel, Lu Tongjia pulled He Xianyao over and asked her to sit next to her. "Xianyao used to visit me often, but she hasn't been coming lately." "Why? You don't like me anymore?" "Why would I?" He Xianyao had been humiliated by Hua Jinyao. How could she go back to the Hua family? Although she didn't want to, the He family's business in Lin City had been taken away. She was really afraid of Hua Jinyao. "If you don't, you can come again next time. I'm old now, and I like to spend time with you young people." "Auntie, you must be joking. You're not old. If I hang out with you now, people will think that you're my sister. You're such a sweet talker." Lu Tongjia's smile became brighter. "I took it seriously. Next time, you have to come to see me more often." He Xianyao didn't understand what Lu Tongjia meant. Li Xiangyuan looked at Lu Tongjia's face and changed the topic. "I heard that your son got married. Jinyao has high standards. You might as well ask your daughter-in-law to accompany you instead of Xianyao." Lu Tongjia's face darkened when Li Xiangyuan mentioned Su Qingsang. She didn't hide her attitude at all. Mrs. Su and Li Xiangyuan looked at each other. Mrs. Su couldn't hide her curiosity and asked curiously. "What's wrong? You're married and you're not happy." "Happy? What was there to be happy about? Marrying a woman like that, he had no family background, no filial piety, and most importantly, his character was questionable." Every time she thought of what Su Qingsang had done with Zhang Yichen, she wanted to tell Hua Jinyao everything. However, she also knew that she didn't have any substantial evidence. Hua Jinyao was so obsessed with Su Qingsang that he wouldn't believe anything she said. She didn't speak, so the other two didn't know where to start. Lu Tongjia didn't want to talk about Su Qingsang. She felt disgusted. When they parted, she held He Xuanyao's hand and kept asking her to play. He didn't forget to say some specious words. She had always wanted a daughter-in-law like He Xianyao who had a good family background and a good family background. She wouldn't be an illegitimate daughter like Su Qingsang, who recognized her halfway. An illegitimate daughter was an illegitimate daughter, she couldn't be brought to the table. Hua Jinyao was obsessed and treated a blade of grass like a treasure. Lu Tongjia talked for a long time. Seeing that He Xianyao understood what she meant, she left. As soon as she left, Mrs. Su also left. He Xianyao sat in her seat and looked at Li Xiangshuan. She was confused. "Mom, what do you think Auntie Hua meant?" "I think she's dissatisfied with her daughter-in-law and wants Hua Jinyao to find another one." "That's impossible." She had heard a lot about the relationship between Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang in Lin City, even though she didn't see them every day. How could Lu Tongjia have such a thought? Didn't you hear her? She said that some women are so greedy these days. They don't want to have children, and they don't want to be filial to their elders. Li Xiangshuan was a smart woman. Hearing this, she understood everything. Even if Lu Tongjia didn't say it out loud, how could he not understand her insinuations? He Xuanyao's eyes lit up because of Li Xiangshuan's words, but only for a second. She thought of the humiliation she had suffered at the hands of Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang. She was a little scared. "Mom, then tell me, are you stupid? You'd better not get involved in this kind of thing. After all, they are mother and son. She's just dissatisfied now. When she gets over it, they'll be fine, but you'll be in trouble." After all, Li Xiangshuan had lived for a few years. She had seen this kind of thing many times. He Xianyao stopped talking, but she couldn't suppress the thought in her heart. She hadn't fought back against Su Qingsang when she humiliated her last time. But she couldn't say that to others. If she could get Lu Tongjia's support and push Su Qingsang down from the position of the young madam of the Hua family, Li Xiangshuan was still explaining the situation, clearly telling her not to get involved with the Hua family. However, He Xianyao already had an idea, so she didn't listen to a word. Seeing that her daughter didn't object, Li Xiangshuan left with her. After these people left, the place became quiet. But no one noticed that behind them, there was a spot that was blocked by a potted plant. Su Peijian sat there, and the smile on her face looked very strange. Su Qingsang had slowly adapted to life in Rong City. Other than when she was on duty, she would go back to the Hua family with Hua Jinyao on weekends to spend time with old Master Hua. Although Lu Tongjia still didn't like her, she was mentally strong and didn't take Lu Tongjia's dislike to heart. As Hua Jinyao said, as long as old Master Hua was on their side, it didn't matter how much Lu Tongjia didn't like her. As for Zhang Yichen, he disappeared again after that day. Hua Jinyao mentioned that he went back to the army. Hua Jinyao seemed to be really close to this uncle of his. She could hear the closeness in Hua Jinyao's words. In fact, not only Hua Jinyao, but old Master Hua also liked this nephew very much. Every time Zhang Yichen was mentioned, he was full of praise. Su Qingsang didn't know if it was an illusion, but every time Old Master Hua and Hua Jinyao talked about Zhang Yichen, she always saw Lu Tongjia's face darken. Gradually, Su Qingsang figured out that Lu Tongjia didn't like Zhang Yichen, her cousin. However, what was the reason for this? At night, when they were sleeping, Su Qingsang rubbed her face against Hua Jinyao's chest and looked up at him. She wanted to say something, but didn't. She mentioned her doubts to Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao looked at her with a smile on his face. Do you care about my mother or my uncle? Do you care about my uncle? I don't care about either. Lu Tongjia didn't like Su Qingsang. She always talked to her like that. As for Zhang Yichen, there was a misunderstanding between them. Su Qingsang later found out that he was just trying to scare her, but she still felt uncomfortable. She wanted to stay far away from him. She only asked out of curiosity. I'm just curious. Hua Jinyao didn't care about her curiosity. He put his arms around her and rested his chin on Su Qingsang's head. My mother doesn't even like her own son. How could she like my uncle? He said in a low voice. Su Qingsang said almost without thinking, then, why does your mother dislike you? It was so strange. She knew it since she came to Rong City. Lu Tongjia didn't like Hua Jinyao at all, and it was unreasonable. Hua Jinyao was Lu Tongjia's only son. He was also the eldest son of the Hua family. Why didn't Lu Tongjia like him? Even though Su Qinghui loved Su Peijian, he didn't dislike Su Yusin. Even though she was an illegitimate daughter at that time, Su Qinghui just ignored her. He wouldn't treat her the way Lu Tongjia did. Su Qingsang didn't hear a reply. She instinctively wanted to look up, but Hua Jinyao pressed the back of her head tightly, not letting her look at him. Hua Jinyao. She wanted to see him clearly, but Hua Jinyao was very strong. He pressed her with one hand and turned off the light with the other. Go to sleep. Su Qingsang didn't move. She could hear that Hua Jinyao's voice was much softer than before, but she didn't understand why. Jinyao. Go to sleep. Hua Jinyao put his arms around her and lay down. He put his arms around her waist. The light in the room had been turned off. She couldn't see his expression, and she had no way of knowing what he was feeling. Since he didn't want to answer that question, Su Qingsang didn't ask. She put her arms around his waist and rubbed her face against his chest. She didn't ask again. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. He felt the soft body of the person in his arms pressed tightly against him. She still had shower gel on her body, and there was a faint fragrance mixed with her own. He took a deep breath. He felt that his heartbeat, which had been disordered because of Su Qingsang's question, slowly returned to normal. Su Qingsang had been busy the whole day, so she was sleepy. She closed her eyes and fell asleep not long after. Hua Jinyao couldn't fall asleep. Listening to Su Qingsang's steady breathing in the dark, he slightly tightened his arms. After he fell asleep, he didn't hold her so tightly anymore. That night, the nightmare came again. The small, dark room. It was a mess everywhere. He ran in a panic, and behind him, the footsteps were getting closer and closer. Finally, an enlarged, extremely ferocious face came closer. The voice that came out of his mouth had troubled him for more than 20 years. Go to hell. Go to hell, the chaotic images that kept flashing through his mind, as well as the words, go to hell. It made Hua Jinyao fall into a nightmare. What was different from the past was that he didn't wake up this time. His body was stiff, and his hands unconsciously began to exert force. Su Qingsang was woken up by the heat. In such weather, she felt the hands around her waist getting tighter and tighter. Chapter 497. Before she was fully awake, Su Qingsang heard some heavy breathing in the room. She raised her head. She couldn't see Hua Jinyao's expression clearly in the dark, but she could feel that his breathing was heavy. Su Qingsang raised her hand to turn on the bedside lamp and found that Hua Jinyao was sweating. She had never seen Hua Jinyao like this. Jinyao. Hua Jinyao. There was no response. Hua Jinyao's brows were tightly knitted, and his face was abnormally red. More and more sweat appeared on his forehead. Su Qingsang could tell that Hua Jinyao was in a terrible nightmare at the moment. Su Qingsang reached out to pat his face. Hua Jinyao seemed to pause for a moment, but soon he frowned again. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang called again, but found that Hua Jinyao showed no signs of waking up. She leaned over, held his face with both hands, and kissed his lips hard. At first, Hua Jinyao's body was very stiff, but slowly he relaxed. Later, his forehead stopped sweating, and then he woke up. When he opened his eyes and saw what Su Qingsang was doing to him, Hua Jinyao was stunned for a moment. "You're awake." It was the first time Su Qingsang saw Hua Jinyao like this, and she was really scared. "Are you okay?" Hua Jinyao blinked and thought of the nightmare. He reached out and held Su Qingsang in his arms. "Did I scare you?" "No." Su Qingsang was worried about him. She propped herself up and looked at his face. His forehead was still sweating. She reached out and took a tissue from the bedside table to wipe his sweat. Hua Jinyao let her do whatever she wanted and looked at her beautiful face, which was right in front of him. He suddenly flipped over and pressed her under his body. He lowered his head and kissed her lips heavily. It was different from the gentleness she had when she kissed him just now. His kiss was fierce, domineering, and lingering. Ever since the two of them got together, Su Qingsang hadn't seen Hua Jinyao so fierce for a long time. She closed her eyes and let him do whatever he wanted. She felt that he was filling her and becoming one with her. He was crazier than ever before. She responded by wrapping her arms around his waist so that he could indulge more. When it was all over, both of them were sweating. However, Su Qingsang was not in a hurry to take a shower. He was still on top of her, and her hand was still on his back. "Are you all right?" Su Qingsang sounded a little nervous. Hua Jinyao remained silent. He buried his face into Su Qingsang's neck. She felt his breath brushing against the skin of her neck. It was a little itchy and a little hot. He did not say anything, and she did not rush him. Subconsciously, she gently stroked his sweaty back. Again and again, she gently patted his back as if she was coaxing a child. Hua Jinyao closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I'm fine." What could have happened to him? It was all in the past. He was no longer that child. He had grown up. Su Qingsang's lips moved. She wanted to ask him what had happened. She wanted to ask him what he was dreaming about. But in the end, she didn't ask anything. She gently patted his back until she was tired and fell into a deep sleep. Hua Jinyao propped himself up after she fell asleep and looked at her little face, which was flushed because of the entanglement just now. He lowered his head and gently kissed her on the forehead. He carefully turned over and held her in his arms. He found a relatively more comfortable position so that she could sleep better. He stopped thinking about the nightmare and the hideous face in the dream. Hua Jinyao did not have any more dreams. Su Qingsang observed him for a few more nights after that day, but she did not see Hua Jinyao have any more nightmares. Of course, it was also possible that he had a nightmare, but she did not notice it. After all, she slept very well most of the time. If she slept too deeply, even if he had a nightmare, she might not know. But after that day, Su Qingsang did not ask Hu Jinyao about the dream that night. After returning to the apartment in the city, Hu Jinyao became even busier. During this period of time, he had several times more social engagements than before. Sometimes, he would ask her, but most of the time, she did not like to go to social engagements. Hu Jinyao did not force her. If she did not want to go, he would ask Yang Wenchang. She was still curious about Hu Jinyao's nightmare. She had a feeling that Hu Jinyao's nightmare had something to do with Lu Tongjia. Why did Lu Tongjia not like Hu Jinyao? Why did Hu Jinyao have a nightmare? She believed that the two things were related. Hu Mingguang and Hu Jinyao must know, but they would not say it. Su Qingsang thought of one person, old Master Hua. Maybe when she went to the Hua family on Friday, she could ask old Master Hua in private. When Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao entered the living room, they were stunned by the lively scene in front of them. In the living room, old Master Hua was not there, nor was Hu Mingguang. Hu Mingmei and Hu Mingliang's families, who usually came, were not there. Other than Lu Tongjia, Li Wanyu, and He Xianyao were sitting on the sofa. He Xianyao was very smart. She knew that Hu Jinyao did not like her, and she had been ignored by him several times. However, Lu Tongjia's words moved her, so she couldn't help but want to try. But she was afraid that she would be humiliated by Hu Jinyao like before. So she called Li Wanyu. Li Wanyu was Li Juanxing's younger sister and her cousin. They had a good relationship. Most importantly, Hu Jinyao was very close to Li Juanxing. Hu Jinyao would not respect her, but he would respect Li Juanxing. But that was only He Xuanyao's opinion. Hu Jinyao would respect Li Juanxing, but only if Li Wanyu did not cause trouble. Brother Jinyao. Li Wanyu stood up when she saw Hu Jinyao. She had no other feelings for Hu Jinyao. She just saw him as a big brother. Knowing that he was married, but the person he married was neither Su Ruoli nor He Xianyao, made her feel a little uncomfortable. In her opinion, only the noble ladies in Rome City were worthy of Hu Jinyao. As for Su Qingsang, who appeared out of nowhere, who knew what kind of person she was? She had snatched Hu Jinyao away so easily. Especially He Xianyao, who had been visiting the Hua family so frequently. Everyone knew that Lu Tongjia liked her and wanted her to be her daughter-in-law. But now, they were robbed by an outsider. She had become a joke in Rome City. So when she heard He Xianyao say that Lu Tongjia only wanted her to accompany Hu Jinyao, she came without thinking. Last time, Hu Jinyao embarrassed them in front of Su Qingsang. Now, they had a chance to see Su Qingsang embarrass herself. They were all looking forward to it. Thinking of this, when Li Wanyu looked at Su Qingsang again, there was a faint emotion in her eyes. She probably didn't know that Lu Tongjia disliked her so much. Did she really think that she could be the young madam of the Hua family by marrying Hu Jinyao? Chapter 498. Su Qingsang saw He Xianyao at first glance. Naturally, she didn't miss the gloating look in Li Wanyu's eyes. She turned to look at Hu Jinyao and gave him a look. Hu Jinyao reached out and squeezed her palm, indicating that she had him to take care of everything. The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth lifted slightly. She found that she quite trusted Hu Jinyao now. The feeling of trusting a person, especially a man, was too subtle. But she found that she didn't have the initial resistance. Jinyao. Li Wanyu didn't miss the small interaction between Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao. To be honest, she felt a little uncomfortable. She felt that ever since Hu Jinyao got married, he had become less and less like the old Hu Jinyao. She would rather Hu Jinyao be as cold and aloof as he used to be. She didn't want him to ignore other women and only treat Su Qingsang well. Brother Jinyao. Xianyao and I happen to be free today, so we came to visit Auntie. We were just talking about you. Yeah, Hu Jinniao responded. Brother Jinniao. Li Wanyu was obviously dissatisfied with his cold attitude. However, He Xianyao tugged at her sleeve at this moment. After receiving He Xuanyao's hint, Li Wanyu stopped talking for the time being. Since you're back, it's just in time. Aunt Zhou has prepared dinner. You can eat later. As she spoke, she looked at He Xianyao affectionately and even reached out to pull her to her side. Stay and have dinner with me today. As long as Auntie doesn't mind. How could I dislike it? Lu Tongjia glanced at Su Qingsang out of the corner of her eye as she spoke. You're getting old, so it's inevitable that people will dislike you. You don't know how happy I am that you are willing to accompany me. Su Qingsang looked at the scene in front of her, speechless. People who didn't know better would think that He Xianyao was Lu Tongjia's child. Hu Jinniao squeezed her hand. His expression didn't change at all. Mom, where are Dad and Grandpa? Your grandfather went to your granduncle's place. Lu Tongjia had called He Xianyao over because the old man wasn't home today. If the old man was here, He Xianyao wouldn't have a chance. Not only was old Master Hu not there, but she also asked Hu Mingguang to send old Master Hu over. Li Wanyu sat at the dining table, watching Su Qingsang and Hu Jinniao sitting together. Even if she didn't like Su Qingsang, she had to admit it. When the two of them sat down, their bodies actually had a similar aura. One was handsome, and the other was delicate. Most importantly, she watched Hu Jinniao put food and ladle soup into Su Qingsang's bowl naturally. It looked like he was very skilled. When had she ever seen Hu Jinniao like that? For a moment, their eyes widened. Even though she had no romantic feelings for Hu Jinniao, she couldn't help but feel jealous when she saw how well he treated a woman. Speaking of which, Hu Jinniao was obviously the one who had known them longer, wasn't he? When had they ever seen him being nice to little sisters from aristocratic families like them? Li Wanyu was fine. Even if she felt uncomfortable, there was no love between a man and a woman, so she only felt her teeth ache. Did these two do it on purpose? She didn't believe that they were usually like this. He Xianyao had the same thought as Li Wanyu. She thought the scene in front of her was a public display of affection. Brother Jinniao, does Miss Su have no hands? Does she even need you to put food into her bowl? Su Qingsang, who had picked up her bowl of soup, was stunned and looked up at He Xianyao. She was about to speak, but Hu Jinniao pressed the back of her hand. Miss He is so young. How can she not see? He Xuanyao's face darkened. Seeing Lu Tongjia staring at Hu Jinniao angrily, she regained her courage and said, Of course I can see Miss Su's hands. She's an adult, but she still needs you to take care of her. Thinking about it, Brother Jinniao, you must be working hard. It's not hard at all. Hu Jinniao looked calm. Instead of restraining himself, he put more food into Su Qingsang's bowl with his chopsticks. I like to take care of her. Do you have a problem with that? He Xuanyao's face was pale. She felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. Enough. Lu Tongjia glanced at He Xianyao. How could she be liked by Hu Jinniao? She used to think that she was smart. How could she be so stupid? Let's eat. Why are you talking so much? She said to Hu Jinniao. She looked at He Xianyao again. Although she hated her for being so useless, she softened her tone and said, Xianyao, Hu Jinniao is just like that. He's not targeting you. Don't take it to heart. Su Qingsang really admired Lu Tongjia at this moment. She was really good at lying through her teeth. Looking at Hu Jinniao, she quietly put some beef into his bowl with her chopsticks and smiled at him. The meaning of that look was quite obvious. See, I'm taking care of you too. Hua Jinyao smiled. The corners of his mouth turned up, and he seemed to be in a good mood. He liked that Su Qingsang looked cold, but from time to time, she would show a bit of slyness like a fox. The interaction between the two of them seemed to be carried out quietly. But they weren't blind. Li Wanyu looked at Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang, then looked at He Xianyao. She suddenly felt that He Xuanyao's fighting ability was so weak that she probably had no chance. She had come here for nothing. Looking at Hua Jinyao, he didn't care about anyone else. Although she was spoiled, she was also proud. Naturally, she wouldn't do anything that would lower her status. Maybe she should listen to her brother and stay out of these things. Li Wanyu thought for a while and understood, but He Xianyao didn't. She had liked Hua Jinyao before. Later, when she was humiliated, she not only refused to give up, but also became more and more unwilling. Now, with Lu Tongjia's support, she felt that she could still fight for him. After dinner, Li Wanyu sat with Su Qingsang for a while. She saw that Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were so intimate, as if there was no one else around. She was more and more sure of her previous thoughts. The most important thing was that she still had to worry about Li Junxing. If Li Junxing knew that she had intervened in Hua Jinyao's business, he would probably be unhappy. Thinking of this, Li Wanyu didn't want to stay any longer, so she got up and said goodbye. Lu Tongjia was surprised that Li Wanyu wanted to leave so early, but Li Wanyu wasn't the highlight of the night, so she didn't have to ask her to stay. She asked Hua Jinyao to see Li Wanyu off. When she asked He Xianyao to come today, she specifically told her not to drive over. Hua Jinyao sat next to Su Qingsang and didn't move. Don't we have a chauffeur at home? Lu Tongjia's face suddenly darkened. You and Junxing are so close. What's wrong? Can't you take your sister home for a while? It's okay. It's the same if the chauffeur takes her home. Li Wanyu was smart now. No matter what Lu Tongjia and He Xianyao wanted to do, she didn't want to get involved. No way. Let Jinyao take you home. Lu Tongjia was very insistent. She stared at Hua Jinyao with obvious dissatisfaction. She had made up her mind to let him take Li Wanyu home. Jinyao, just take her home. Su Qingsang didn't know what Lu Tongjia was planning, but she didn't mind seeing what else Lu Tongjia wanted to do. Hua Jinyao gave Su Qingsang a disapproving look, but Su Qingsang winked at him. The two of them had been together for a few months and had gradually developed a tacit understanding. Hua Jinyao understood with one look from her. Although he didn't agree, he still stood up and said, Wanyu, let's go. After all, she was Li Junxing's sister and lived not far from the Hua family. She reluctantly took her home. Hua Jinyao left, leaving only Lu Tongjia, Su Qingsang, and He Xianyao in the living room. Lu Tongjia held He Xuanyao's hand and talked to her affectionately. Su Qingsang looked at the two of them, who were as warm as mother and daughter. Not only did she not feel annoyed, but she also found it interesting. He Xianyao was a little proud at first. But this smugness soon disappeared. Su Qingsang didn't look sad at all. She didn't even look aggrieved. Instead, she looked like she was watching a good show. Didn't she care about Lu Tongjia's feelings for her at all? She didn't know that Su Qingsang was really strong-willed. As an illegitimate daughter, she was ignored by Li Qianxue and looked down on by the servants of the Li family. Compared to them, Lu Tongjia's case was nothing. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Qingsang's calm face, and her anger rose little by little. She patted He Xuanyao's hand and said with a sigh, speaking of which, Jinyao has been busy with work these years. Thank you for coming here to keep me company. Auntie, you're welcome. I'm not being polite. I really like you. Lu Tongjia glared at Su Qingsang as she spoke. Her attitude towards He Xianyao was completely different from how she treated Su Qingsang. She looked at He Xianyao as if she was looking at her own daughter. Xianyao, it would be great if you were my daughter-in-law. Auntie. No matter how thick-skinned He Xianyao was, she was still very embarrassed. I'm telling the truth. You're so polite and considerate. I believe that if you were my daughter-in-law, you would take good care of Jinyao, and not just let him take care of you. As she spoke, she glanced at Su Qingsang again. The meaning of that look was very obvious. Su Qingsang didn't seem to see it. She touched her nose and felt that the scene in front of her was quite interesting. But it's not too late. Xianyao, are you willing to be my daughter-in-law? Su Qingsang blinked. She, the main character, was still here. Was it really okay for them to say this in front of me? Auntie. He Xianyao blushed. I am willing. Su Qingsang was glad that she didn't drink water. If she drank water now, she would definitely spit it out. I knew I was right about you. Lu Tongjia breathed a sigh of relief. When she looked at Su Qingsang, there was contempt in the corner of her eyes. After all, you're much better than some selfish people who only care about themselves. Auntie. After hearing that, Su Qingsang asked casually, does Jinyao have any other brothers? Don't play dumb. I'm talking about Jinyao. Chapter 499. Auntie. He Xianyao was embarrassed, but she still nodded. I do. Lu Tongjia seemed to have found some courage. She turned to Su Qingsang and said, did you hear that? She does. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. She wasn't deaf. Miss He likes to be a mistress. If she hadn't wanted to figure out what Lu Tongjia and He Xianyao were up to, she would have left already. She didn't expect to hear such a ridiculous conversation. Since they were so shameless, she couldn't be blamed for being rude. He Xianyao's face turned from red to white. She stared at Su Qingsang as if she wanted to burn a hole in her body. What are you talking about? Lu Tongjia couldn't bear it anymore. Who wants to be a mistress? If you don't want to be a mistress, how do you plan to marry Jinyao? Su Qingsang blinked. Her pretty face was full of confusion. Why do I remember that I'm Jinyao's wife? Why don't you just divorce Jinyao? Lu Tongjia looked at Su Qingsang and didn't hide her dissatisfaction. Why don't you look at yourself? How are you good enough for Jinyao? Auntie. It's not up to you or me to decide whether I'm good enough for him or not. It's up to Jinyao to decide. Don't you think so? At the very least, if Jinyao wants a divorce or has other thoughts, he'll come to me himself. It's not right for you to make the decision for him. Su Qingsang, you think you have him in your hands, don't you? Auntie, you may have misunderstood. Su Qingsang knew that Lu Tongjia didn't like her, but she didn't really mind. After all, she wasn't money. Not everyone liked her. Jinyao and I are equal. I don't have him in my hands, and he doesn't need me to. That's one thing. Secondly, Jinyao and I have registered our marriage certificate. We are legally married. Our relationship is protected by the law. Even you don't have the right to ask for a divorce. Su Qingsang, don't you feel ashamed saying that? What did you do to make Jinyao marry you? Do you really think other people are stupid and can't figure it out? What method did she use? Su Qingsang blinked her eyes. She really didn't know when she had played tricks on Jinyao. Su Qingsang, if you still want to save face, you should take the initiative to give up your position. Don't make everyone look bad when the time comes. Auntie. I'm sorry. It was precisely because I wanted face that I couldn't give up my position. After all, I didn't cheat, and I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I ask to leave the court? You haven't done anything wrong. You don't even want to have children. Why would the whole family need a daughter-in-law like you? Or have you changed your mind now? Are you willing to have children now? I don't want to. Su Qingsang was not averse to having children. After all, she was an obstetrician and gynecologist. She just felt that it was still too early for her to have a child 2 years later. However, now that she was provoked by Lu Tongjia's aggressive attitude, she became rebellious. Auntie, I can tell you very clearly. I've already discussed it with Hu Jinyao. We don't plan on having children anytime soon. Ha! Lu Tongjia was so angry that she laughed. Listen. You don't want to have children with Hu Jinyao, and you want to stop others from having children. How can you do that in the world? Su Qingsang frowned. Before she could speak, Lu Tongjia continued, you saw it yourself. Xianyao is better than you in all aspects, whether in terms of family background or appearance. Most importantly, she is sincere to Jinyao. She doesn't have any ulterior motives. She is willing to do everything for Jinyao, to bear his children. You can't do those things. If you have self-awareness, you should divorce Jinyao as soon as possible. Don't waste his time. Xianyao blushed and sat on the side without saying anything. Su Qingsang looked at the shy look on her face and suddenly smiled. Auntie, I don't dare to say whether I will waste his time or not. But if Miss He really wants to be with him, I'm afraid that will really be a waste of his time. Her slightly narrowed eyes were full of cunning. She had known that Xianyao was shameless for a long time. Since that was the case, there was no need to save her face. After all, she took off her clothes and slept with Jinyao, but he didn't have any reaction. Under such circumstances, how could Jinyao have a child with her? Xuanyao's face was like a color palette that had been overturned. Her face was green, then white, then red, then black. She looked at Su Qingsang and suddenly stood up. She bit her lip and was about to rush out. Xianyao. Lu Tongjia grabbed her hand and turned to look at Su Qingsang. What nonsense are you talking about? You can ask Jinyao whether I'm talking nonsense or not. Su Qingsang stood up. She was tired of watching the show and didn't want to see it anymore. Miss He, if you want to have a child with Jinyao, I won't object. But the premise is that you can find a way to make Jinyao interested in you. Otherwise, how are you going to have a child? You are shameless. Xianyao knew what she had done, but when she saw the faint doubt on Lu Tongjia's face, she couldn't say what she had done. She turned to Su Qingsang and said, don't be too proud. Jinyao is just infatuated with you. He will see it sooner or later. Yes. It's okay. Infatuation is better than not having feelings for you. But you should think about what you can do next time. After all, you stripped naked in front of a man, but he ignored you. That's so embarrassing. Xianyao bit her lip hard. She didn't care that Lu Tongjia was still holding her hand. She shook off Lu Tongjia's hand and rushed out without looking back. She left in a hurry, but Su Qingsang could still hear her sobbing and see a few drops of tears falling from her eyes. Lu Tongjia's face darkened. She stared at Su Qingsang with her sharp eyes, as if she wanted to pierce through her. Okay. I didn't know that you were such a sharp-tongued person. Auntie, you are too kind. Su Qingsang took it as a compliment. I'm actually quite clumsy. I just like to tell the truth. Lu Tongjia's face turned green. Okay. You are indeed a schemer. I want to see. How long can you use those tricks on Jinyao? Auntie, I want to know too. How about I ask him for you next time? Su Qingsang found that she was becoming more and more shameless in front of Lu Tongjia. Lu Tongjia was so angry that she couldn't speak. In the end, she could only glare at Su Qingsang, turn around, and go upstairs without looking back. Su Qingsang felt a little helpless. Although she knew that it wasn't entirely her fault, she felt a little wrong that Lu Tongjia hated her so much. She turned around and saw that Hu Jinyao had come back. He stood at the gate and looked at her with a faint smile on his face. You're back. Before she could walk up to him, Hu Jinyao had already walked up to her, reached out, and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead, with a smile on his face. You didn't give it away. Why are you back so soon? Not far. Hu Jinyao didn't want to tell her that he had warned Li Wanyu in the car. He was willing to care about his friendship with Li Junxing, but Li Wanyu had to think clearly about whether she was going to go against him. He suddenly lowered his head and pressed his forehead against her face. He Xianyao wants to have children with me. You don't object? Ha! What are you thinking? Su Qingsang blushed. Did he hear that? I'm not interested in her. Hu Jinyao suddenly carried her in his arms. But I don't agree with what you said. He lowered his head and looked at her, his eyes full of seriousness. Next time, if someone says they want to have children with me, you can just say that I don't agree. After all, I'm yours now. Su Qingsang put her arms around his neck when she lost her balance. She also raised her head to look at him. Mine alone. Of course. Mrs. Hua. Su Qingsang smiled because of the way he called her Mrs. Hua. The drama she had just watched would be a sideshow. She took the initiative to put her lips on his and gave him a sweet kiss. However, when she was about to move away, Hu Jinyao caught her lips and deepened the kiss. With his tall figure, Hu Jinyao easily carried Su Qingsang upstairs. As for He Xianyao, who had made such a scene today, who cared about her? When Su Qingsang saw Shi Mengwan at the airport, her face was especially bright. She almost jumped up and hugged her. Previously, Shi Mengwan had said that she would come to Rong City to play with her. However, after waiting for more than a week, there was no news. She thought that she wouldn't come. Seriously, you only sent me a message before you got on the plane. Fortunately, I didn't have surgery today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to pick you up. Although she didn't have surgery today, she had to go to work. Fortunately, Sun Huiya saw that she usually behaved well. She agreed immediately when she asked for leave for a while. I just wanted to give you a surprise. Shi Mengwan pulled her clothes. Although it was already spring in Rong City, it was much colder than Lin City. Although it was already spring, it was much colder than Lin City. Looking around, she was a little disappointed. Why is there no snow? Did you think there would be snow? It melted long ago. Why didn't you say so earlier? I'll take you to the snow country next time. The snow had melted long ago. Besides, even in the north, it didn't snow every day. Okay. But this time, I'll eat you first. Warmly welcome. Su Qingsang took the luggage from her hands and took her to the parking lot outside. After putting her luggage in her car, Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao got in. When Shi Mengwan got off the plane, she wore a scarf and sunglasses. Now that she was in the car, she took off the scarf and sunglasses, revealing her face. Su Qingsang was about to start the car, but when she saw her face, she stopped. She leaned over and stared at Shi Mengwan's face. She felt that she couldn't explain it clearly on the phone. Now that she was here, she finally had the time to tell Shi Mengwan about her background. She told Xiang Kaiping about how she and Li Qianxue had reconciled with each other and how Li Qianxue had accompanied her to Rong City before the Lunar New Year. She told Xiang Kaiping about how she and Li Qianxue had come to Rong City together. Even now, Li Qianxue still video called her almost every day. As for Old Master Li and Su Yusin, they were slowly building a relationship. That's what happened. The bed was already made. Su Qingsang looked at Shi Mengwan, who was dumbfounded and shocked. Finally, she clicked her tongue, stood up, walked to Su Qingsang, and walked around her. Oh my God! Your background is actually so bizarre. Su Qingsang found it unbelievable. I didn't believe it at first. But the paternity test can't be fake. Moreover, only she knew that she was touched, grateful, and protective of Xiang Kaiping, but she didn't have the instinct to get close to her. Shi Mengwan suddenly patted her on the shoulder. Good girl, you knew it during the New Year, didn't you? You didn't tell me. You're not a good friend. Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line and looked a little guilty. I'm sorry. It's not that I didn't tell you on purpose. She didn't know what to say. More importantly, the situation at the time didn't allow for it. You know how my mother, Auntie Xiang, was at that time. Her waist was injured, and she wasn't in good spirits. I was afraid that if you knew, you wouldn't be able to hide your emotions and give yourself away in front of her. So I didn't say it. Besides, she had decided to treat Xiang Kaiping as her own mother. What did it matter whether she said it or not? Shi Mengwan nodded. Although she could control her emotions, it was really a little difficult to guarantee that she wouldn't reveal anything. It must have been hard for you. You hid it for so long. Speaking of which, you stayed with her for so long. Didn't she suspect anything? No. Su Qingsang shook her head. Why would she suspect anything? She felt guilty and uneasy at that time, so she naturally wouldn't think so much. That's true. Thinking of what Xiang Kaiping said in front of her at that time, Shi Mengwan could really understand. Then, where is Auntie Xiang now? I didn't ask anymore. Su Qingsang thought of the last time she met Xiang Kaiping. She blamed her for not telling her earlier, and the two of them parted on bad terms. But I heard that Su Peijian has accepted her as her mother and moved in with her. I think she should be slowly building a relationship with Su Peijian. Speaking of which, it was really a very tragic thing. She and Li Qianxue, Xiang Kaiping and Su Peijian. They were mother and daughter, but because of Su Qinghui's actions, they had to rebuild their mother-daughter relationship. They were related by blood, but they couldn't get along like a normal mother and daughter. Shi Mengwan quite liked Xiang Kaiping. Thinking of Su Peijian's personality, she instinctively frowned. With Su Peijian's personality, will she accept Auntie Xiang? Why do I feel that this is so magical? Why not? Su Qingsang didn't think it was strange. After all, she is her biological mother. Moreover, she had her own reasons for abandoning her. Maybe. Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk about conspiracy theories. Anyway, she felt that Su Peijian wasn't the kind of person who would so easily accept a strange woman as her mother. So, you and your mother are your biological mother. How is your relationship now? She didn't forget that every time Li Qianxue saw Su Qingsang, she would look at her with disdain. His face was filled with disdain and disregard. Now that she knows that Su Qingsang is her biological daughter, her expression must be very interesting. It was a pity that she didn't get to see it. That's good. She had been busy with work recently. After all, my father left the Li Corporation, and she has to make many decisions. Old Master Li was getting on in years. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to see him work himself to death. Therefore, Li Qianxue was now in charge of the company. Su Yusin didn't live on campus anymore. When he was free, he would go to the company to help out. In any case, his grades were good and he would not lag behind in his studies. Helping out at the company could be considered as an early internship. Although Li Qianxue didn't need Su Yusin to be so busy, it would be better to have a child to accompany her. Your father is no longer in the Li Corporation. So where is he now? What are you doing? I don't know. Su Qingsang shook her head. She really had no idea. He had heard from Su Yusin that Su Qinghui had visited him a few times and only said some words of concern. He also apologized to Su Yusin for neglecting him in the past. Also, asked him to take care of the family. He said that he was about to become an adult and was an adult. Su Qingsang didn't know if he had visited Li Qianxue. Because Li Qianxue seemed to be very reluctant to mention Su Qinghui. She had asked her once. Although Li Qianxue wasn't angry, she could see that her expression wasn't good. Su Qinghui had actually called her once, and the content was also to apologize. To apologize for his decision to replace the child. Unlike Li Qianxue, Su Qingsang didn't blame Su Qinghui too much. In fact, she was more willing to believe that Su Qinghui was impulsive back then. Even if he had done it on purpose, things had already turned out this way. She also didn't want to let herself fall into the mood of being responsible and didn't want to blame him. After that, Su Qinghui never contacted her again. She did take the initiative to call Su Qinghui twice, but the father and daughter didn't have much affection before, so they didn't know what to say when they really called. They just said a few greetings and then hung up. Su Qinghui cared about her situation in Rome City and told her to take good care of herself. It had been half a month since the last call. Therefore, Su Qingsang didn't know where Su Qinghui was and what he was doing. He probably doesn't want others to see him like this. After all, Su Qinghui's current state shouldn't be too good. Not only did he leave the Li Corporation, but he also divorced Li Qianxue. More importantly, after the divorce, he realized that he actually had feelings for Li Qianxue. It was really quite ironic. When he had it, he didn't know how to cherish it. When he lost it, he wanted to get it back, but found that there was no chance. Shi Mengwan thought of the few times she had interacted with Su Qinghui in the past and felt a little emotional. Did your mother really divorce him just like that? Yes. Su Qingsang actually didn't want to believe it, but Li Qianxue was such a proud person. She probably really didn't want to look back. During this period of time, she could actually see the hidden fatigue in Li Qianxue's eyes. Although she had been the president of the Li Corporation for so many years, many things were Su Qinghui who took the initiative to help her bear the responsibility. In addition to the previous cooperation between the Li Corporation and Tianyu Group, Li Qianxue had been very busy recently. Sometimes when she video called her at night, she was still in the office dealing with business. Su Qingsang actually felt a little sorry. She wanted to persuade Li Qianxue that even if they divorced, she could let Su Qinghui continue to work in the Li Corporation. However, thinking of Li Qianxue's personality, she didn't say that suggestion in the end. She wanted to say a few words, but Li Qianxue obviously didn't want to. Chapter 501. Let's not talk about them. Let's go out for dinner. Su Qingsang took out her phone and called Hu Jinyao to ask if he was done with work. If not, they could have dinner together. Hu Jinyao had a business meeting that night. She hung up the phone and smiled at Shi Mengwan. There's no other way. It's just the two of us tonight. Hu Jinyao has been very busy recently. He seems to have a lot of things to do in the company. But don't worry, he'll treat you to a big meal tomorrow. Shi Mengwan put her arm around Su Qingsang's arm. What? Are you afraid that I'll be unhappy? It's better without Hu Jinniao. The two of us can have a good talk. After telling Mizu that she didn't have to cook that day, Su Qingsang took Shi Mengwan to the restaurant closest to her house. This is the property of a friend of Hu Jinniao. The dishes here are very special and the name is nice. Although there were only two of them, when Su Qingsang showed her gold card, the waiter immediately took her upstairs to a private room specially prepared for the VIPs. Sure. Mrs. Hua. Shi Mengwan took a step back and looked at Su Qingsang. Have you noticed that ever since you started dating Hu Jinniao, you become more and more like a rich lady? Nonsense again. Haven't I always been like this? She rarely came to places like this. She usually came with Hu Jinniao. But Hu Jinniao's friends were nice. This restaurant was the property of Wan Xianing's family. He was the one who gave her the gold card. The two of them were taken upstairs by the waiter. Su Qingsang asked Shi Mengwan and ordered a few signature dishes. While waiting for the dishes to be served, they talked about each other's recent situations. Su Qingsang didn't have much to say. Hospital, home. Speaking of which, ever since Lu Tongjia had a disagreement with her, she had been summoned back to the Hua family twice by old Master Hua. He Xianyao was there both times. But old Master Hua was there, so he Xianyao only went to visit old Master Hua as a junior. After dinner, she didn't stay long and left. During that time, Lu Tongjia kept praising how considerate and polite he Xianyao was. Not only did she visit her often, but she also went shopping with her. Last time, she also went with her to the Women's Chamber of Commerce. The Women's Chamber of Commerce in Rong City was actually founded by the wives of the well-known families in the business world. Usually, he would do some charity work. On one hand, she was helping others. On the other hand, she was promoting her husband's company. Xianyao might have done it. Speaking of which, she has helped a lot with the company's business. Whoever marries her in the future will marry a good wife. Even though old Master Hua was there, Lu Tongjia didn't mind praising he Xianyao. The others could tell that Lu Tongjia was unhappy with Su Qingsang. However, Su Qingsang pretended that she didn't notice it. She continued to act as normal with Hu Jinniao. For the second time, Lu Tongjia praised he Xianyao to the heavens and said that it was a pity that such a good daughter-in-law didn't marry into the Hua family. Hu Jinniao glanced at the Hua brothers, who were also present. Yes. Mom. Fertile water should not flow to outsiders. Since you think Miss He is so good, why don't you let Yifan or Yang be with her? She's married into the Hua family. Lu Tongjia's and Hui Yifan's expressions changed at that simple sentence. He Xianyao liked Hu Jinniao. Not only did he not appreciate it, but he also wanted her to be with the Hua brothers. Didn't he mean that he wanted Hui Yifan to marry someone he didn't like? Lu Tongjia was even angrier. Her son didn't give her any face. She wanted to lose her temper, but he Xianyao couldn't stay. No matter how thick-skinned she was, she couldn't stand being kicked around like a bull. She ran away before the meal was finished. After she left, no matter how unhappy Hui Yifan and Lu Tongjia were, they couldn't do anything. After that, Su Qingsang felt peaceful. At least, Lu Tongjia didn't call to ask them to go home for dinner. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinniao could handle these things themselves, so Su Qingsang didn't think it was necessary to tell Shi Mengwan. I'm fine, but you? Su Qingsang looked at the faint shadow under Shi Mengwan's eyes. Although I'm not in Lin City, don't work too hard. That was your own studio to begin with. It doesn't matter if you have more or less jobs. Don't risk your life for money. No, I didn't. I just took 2 more jobs after the design competition. Don't worry. I'll be relieved after this. Shi Mengwan lowered her head and used the act of drinking water to hide her guilty conscience. Su Qingsang had been her good friend for many years. If Shi Mengwan acted the slightest bit weird, Shi Mengwan would easily notice. Mengwan, why don't you come to Rong City to develop your career? Su Qingsang suggested seriously. You see, you have a studio anyway. It's the same wherever you go. If you come to Rong City, we'll have company again. What do you think? No. Shi Mengwan refused without thinking. I already have a foundation in Lin City. I don't want to leave it behind. Why do you want to leave it behind? Make it the headquarters and open a branch here. As for the business, you don't have to worry about it. With Hu Jiniao's connections, your studio will definitely be successful. She believed that Hu Jiniao would be very willing to help. No need. Rely on your Hu Jiniao. I don't want to. Moreover, even though Lin City wasn't my original home, it was still very close to my home no matter what. I think it'll be convenient for me to go home to see my parents. If I come to Rong City, it'll be inconvenient for me to go home to see my parents. Shi Mengwan's home was in another city not far from Lin City. There was no airport there. Shi Mengwan usually went home to see her parents by train or car. Occasionally, she drove herself. If she really came to Rong City, it would be inconvenient for her to go home to see her parents. It's fine if you don't come, but you have to promise me. Take good care of yourself. Don't worry. I will. Shi Mengwan was too embarrassed to say that she didn't look very well these days because of Jean Hausa, and it had nothing to do with her staying up late to draw pictures. Su Qingsang was really worried when she said that. Shi Mengwan used to draw day and night. In the past, she lived close to Lin City, so she always had time to keep an eye on her. Now she was really worried. Thinking about it, she suddenly had a suggestion. Speaking of which, since you're here, why don't I ask Hu Jiniao to take you to meet his childhood friends next time? I think they're all good people. They're all elites. Do you want to pick one of them? Su Qingsang was willing to believe that Jean Hausa, whom Shi Mengwan had met before, was her big brother. But he already had a fiancée. Shi Mengwan really wanted to wait for him for the rest of her life. Su Qingsang felt wronged for her. Shi Mengwan's appearance and figure were both excellent. Even if her family background wasn't the best, she had opened her own studio and the business was good. Her reputation was also slowly building. It would be a pity to spend the rest of her life with that completely impossible person. We'll see. Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk about it. I don't want to get married now. Who asked you to get married? I'm asking you to fall in love. It's okay to enjoy love, right? Even if you don't think it's suitable in the future, you can break up. If it were anyone else, Su Qingsang wouldn't have persuaded her like this. But seeing Shi Mengwan wait for her big brother year after year, who knew where he had forgotten her, she really felt that it wasn't worth it. All right. You don't have to worry about my business. You can just live a good life with Hu Jiniao. She didn't want to mention it, so Su Qingsang didn't say it. She and Hu Jiniao had been very close recently. They were almost as sweet as honey. Naturally, she also hoped that her best friend could be happy. Shi Mengwan was still thinking about how to change the topic away from herself when her phone rang. She took it out and glanced at it. The word enemy on it made her look a little uncomfortable all of a sudden. I'm going out to take a call. Shi Mengwan took her phone and walked out. She didn't know why Jean Hausa called her. She clenched her phone tightly and turned off the sound. She walked out of the private room and didn't decide whether she should answer it or not. If she answered it, what would she say? While she was still struggling, the phone had already been hung up. Shi Mengwan was a little surprised, but it seemed to be expected. Leaning against the wall, she held her phone and leaned against the wall, unable to come back to her senses for a long time. Just as she was about to go back to the private room, her phone rang again. Thinking it was still Zhang Haoze, Shi Mengwan picked it up without looking. Unexpectedly, it was a call from the studio. Her face was full of disappointment. After talking about the main topic, she looked at the phone screen that had gone dark. She let out a long sigh and didn't return Zhang Haoze's call. She walked towards the private room, but saw a woman in front of her coming out of the elevator and entering one of the private rooms. That figure looked like Su Peijian. Shi Mengwan blinked. Before she could see clearly, the other party had already entered the room. She was slightly nearsighted, so for a moment, she wasn't even sure if it was really her or if she was seeing things. She looked again and found that not long after, another man followed her into the room. Shi Mengwan watched for a while longer and finally believed that she might have seen things wrong. Su Peijian should still be in Lin City at this time, right? How could she be in Rong City? Besides, why did she come to Rong City? Shaking her head, Shi Mengwan didn't take this matter to heart. If the person who saw that figure just now was Su Qingsang, then she would know that the person sitting only 3 private rooms away from them was Su Peijian. At the Huo family. Lu Tongjia sat on the sofa in the room and looked at Huo Mingguang, who was reading a book. Her face was obviously dissatisfied. What do you mean? As the current chairman of Tianyu Group, is it so difficult for you to arrange for someone to enter the company? Tongjia. Huo Mingguang put the book in his hand aside and said, "It's not that it's difficult for me to arrange for someone, but you have to arrange for this person to be by Jinyao's side. Jinyao's people were all chosen by himself. He may not use the people I give him." Chapter 502. Jinyao chooses his own secretaries. Even if I send them to him, he might not use them. He has more than one secretary. Besides, I remember that Zhang Yang's wife is going to have a baby. He seems to be planning to take a leave of absence. Don't think that I don't know. When I went to the company last time, I happened to hear it. Jinyao had more than one secretary, but Zhang Yang was the one he relied on the most. He had been with him for several years. Other than him, Yang Wenchang, his assistant, took care of everything. She didn't even want the position of an assistant. She just wanted a secretary, and it wasn't a particularly important position. Why couldn't she get it? Huo Mingguang looked at Lu Tongjia and felt a little helpless. He knew what his wife was thinking. Tongjia, Jinyao is already married. Why do you? What did I do? Lu Tongjia looked at Huo Mingguang. She didn't think she did anything wrong. What did I do? I did it for his own good. Only Huo Jinyao would treat such a woman like a treasure. Huo Mingguang didn't know what to say. He didn't have a problem with Su Qingsang. To Jinyao, no matter what, Huo Jinyao was his son. Even if he couldn't get over it, he wouldn't be as angry as Lu Tongjia. I don't care. I don't care how you do it. Anyway, I'll leave it to you. You don't have to be so angry. I'll ask someone to arrange it tomorrow. Is that okay? Lu Tongjia finally looked a little better, but there was still a hint of worry on her face. Huo Mingguang got up, walked to Lu Tongjia, and put his arm around her shoulder. I won't try to persuade you. I'm just afraid that Jinyao will be dissatisfied with you in the end. By then, he'll be dissatisfied with me. Lu Tongjia sneered. I don't need him to be satisfied with me. Which one of the things he has done has satisfied me? None, not a single one. If he doesn't satisfy me, why should I satisfy him? Am I his mother? Or is he my mother? Hua Mingguang didn't say anything. He just patted her shoulder. Lu Tongjia was depressed. She leaned her face against his chest. Mingguang, do you think I'm being unreasonable? The last time she brought He Xianyao home, old Master Hua was very dissatisfied with her and looked very angry. Later, she didn't forget to tell Hua Mingguang in private to restrain herself. Restrain? Why did she have to restrain herself? Hua Jianyao didn't restrain himself at all. She hated the old man for being so biased. It was clear that Hua Jianyao had made such a big mistake. It was clear that he had wronged everyone in the family. How could old Master Hua let him off lightly? No. Hua Mingguang had been married to Lu Tongjia for more than 30 years. They had gone through ups and downs together, so he knew her very well. He knew the pain in her heart, and he also knew the difficulty in her heart. Mingguang. To tell you the truth, I really don't want to see my grandson come out of the womb of a woman like Su Qingsang. He was full of schemes and tricks. You didn't see the way she talked to me before. I really don't like her. Of course, she would not admit that she disliked Hua Jianyao even more. Because she didn't like Hua Jianyao, she was very critical of Su Qingsang. Hua Mingguang understood. All right, don't think too much about it. I'll arrange the people for you. As for what happens next, it's not my business. Okay. Lu Tongjia nodded and looked up at Hua Mingguang. Her eyes were a little red. Mingguang, thank you. Hua Mingguang was silent and sighed in his heart. After so many years, he also had a grudge against Hua Jianyao, so he let Lu Tongjia do whatever she wanted. However, thinking of how much Hua Jianyao cared for Su Qingsang, Hua Mingguang suddenly had a vague premonition. This time, Lu Tongjia probably wouldn't get what she wanted. Shi Mengwan looked at the antique door in front of her and looked a little impressed. The environment here is really good. How did you find out? I don't need to find out. Su Qingsang glanced at her and shook the gold card in her hand. Hua Jianyao told me yesterday. He said that this place is good. It's just the right season to come here. It was Friday, and Hua Jianyao had to go to work. He couldn't accompany them. More importantly, he knew that Su Qingsang wanted to have a good time with Shi Mengwan and her two good friends. President Hua is quite a good person. Shi Mengwan gave her an ambiguous look. But you really don't have to ask for leave to accompany me. It's not like I haven't traveled alone before. That's different. You came all the way here. I have to be a good host. Su Qingsang took her hand and said, let's go. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to you. After all, it's my first time here. If it weren't for the GPS and Hua Jianyao telling her the place yesterday, she might not have been able to find it. Just say that you wanted to come out and have fun, so you used me as an excuse. Shi Mengwan joked with Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang nodded repeatedly. Wow, you saw through me. I'm going to kill you. As she spoke, she reached out her hand and was about to strangle her. Shi Mengwan laughed and dodged it. After a while, the two of them entered the door together. This time, Su Qingsang brought Shi Mengwan here to go to the hot spring. This place was a gift from a client who had worked with Hua Jianyao. After that person gave the gold card to Hua Jianyao, he had only brought a few of his childhood friends here twice. This time, when Shi Mengwan came, he thought of this place. All the buildings were designed to imitate the Suzhou Gardens and looked antique. However, the privacy inside was very good. Like the Japanese hot spring hotels, each hot spring was separated by a small space. This place is really nice. Su Qingsang looked at the environment in front of her. It looks even bigger than the hot spring hotel I went to in Japan. And the environment is even better. It's not bad. Shi Mengwan also nodded, her face full of admiration. Let's go. Let's enjoy ourselves today. I heard that there's a spa next door. We can go there after we finish the hot spring. Then what are we waiting for? I can't wait. Su Qingsang and Shi Mengwan first took a good look around the club. Although it was already winter, she didn't know what method the people in the club used. There were a lot of green plants that she didn't know the names of, and there were even plum blossoms. Wow! Shi Mengwan couldn't help but exclaim, why are the plum blossoms blooming at this time? Shouldn't it have bloomed already? Almost. Look, the flowering period is almost over. We're in luck. Some of the plum blossoms were about to wither. But it still didn't affect the two of them. It's really good. Shi Mengwan hugged Su Qingsang. Qingsang, I'm very satisfied with today's arrangement. Don't worry, it'll make you even more satisfied. It was Friday. Su Qingsang had time to accompany her tomorrow and the day after. In the evening, Su Qingsang and Shi Mengwan went to the spa first, then went to the hot spring in the small room. The hot spring water was brought into the room from outside, and then the room was directly turned into a small hot spring pool. Although it was called a small pool, it was actually very big. It could accommodate 7 or 8 people to go into the pool together. Because of the hot spring, Su Qingsang and Shi Mengwan only wore swimsuits and went into the water. The two of them soaked for a while, and Shi Mengwan heard the phone on the small table on the shore ring. The ringtone was specially set by her, and she knew it was Jean Hausa. She was stunned for a moment, and she didn't move in the hot spring. Su Qingsang was on the other side of the hot spring pool. Hearing the ringtone, she turned to look at her. Your phone is ringing. Do you want me to get it for you? No need. She had marked Jean Hausa's name as enemy. With Su Qingsang's sharp senses, she would definitely find something wrong. I'll do it myself. Shi Mengwan got up to get the phone. After getting the phone, she looked at the number on it for a few seconds, and finally put on the bathrobe prepared by the club. Qingsang, I'll go out to take a call. Okay. Su Qingsang waved her hand and didn't think much about it. Shi Mengwan took the phone and went out, while she continued to soak in the hot spring. Not long after, she heard light footsteps, and then the sound of the door being opened. When Shi Mengwan went out, she was in a hurry and didn't close the door, but just left it unlocked. Now that the door was opened and closed, Su Qingsang thought it was Shi Mengwan coming back. Are you done with the call? What call? Why did you go outside? Uncle. Looking at the person who suddenly appeared in front of her, Su Qingsang was stunned. She wanted to scream, but at the same time, she restrained herself. Then, almost instinctively, she shrank her body into the hot spring. Zhang Yichen didn't expect to see Su Qingsang here. Although it was misty in the hot spring, he could still see her clearly at a glance. The bikini that Su Qingsang was wearing, and he quickly turned around so that he wouldn't take another look. Sorry. He saw that the door was unlocked, so he thought that there was no one inside. You. Su Qingsang wanted to say something, but at that moment, there was another flurry of footsteps outside. Zhang Yichen's expression changed, and he looked around. Although they were called small rooms, they weren't small at all. In addition to the hot spring, there was an inner room with a bed and a bathroom. On the side, there were cabinets for customers to hang their clothes. Zhang Yichen glanced at Su Qingsang, then glanced around the room. At last, he dashed into the closet where the clothes were hung. Before he went in, he glanced at Su Qingsang. He didn't say anything, but the meaning of his eyes and movement was obvious. Seeing his series of actions, Su Qingsang didn't know how to react for a moment. She heard the footsteps coming closer and closer, and then she seemed to hear someone arguing in the next room. Someone must have disturbed them. Soon, someone knocked on the door of her room. Chapter 503. After standing there for a few seconds, Su Qingsang opened the door. There were several people standing outside. Seeing her open the door, they seemed to be about to rush in. Su Qingsang quickly stood in front of them, looking at the behavior of these people in front of her. Who are you? Su Qingsang didn't let those people in. She glanced around. There were at least 5 people standing in front of her, all wearing black suits. She could also hear the protesting voices of the guests on the other side of the corridor. Obviously, they were dissatisfied with their behavior. The hot spring was very warm inside, but the wind in the corridor was a little cold. Su Qingsang tightened her bathrobe and looked at the people in front of her with a guarded expression. What do you want? The man in the lead took a step forward when he saw Su Qingsang. Sorry, our boss just lost a dog. We came to look for it. There is no dog here. Su Qingsang frowned because of what he said. Dog? Was he talking about Zhang Yichen? Yes or no, let us go in and have a look. Sir, I'm here to spend money. You came into my room casually and disturbed me while I was enjoying the hot spring. Can I complain to your boss? I'm sorry, boss. The lost dog is very valuable. We must find it. As the man spoke, he raised his hand and was about to let the people behind him rush in. How could Su Qingsang let them in? She stood in front of them and said, I advise you to think about it carefully. I'm not someone you can mess with. Do you know who I am? The man in the lead had a mustache. Hearing that, he stopped rushing in and took a step back, looking Su Qingsang up and down. Su Qingsang was wearing a bathrobe, and her hair was tied up on top of her head. The man couldn't recognize her just like that. Su Qingsang stared at the man and said, I am the wife of Hu Jinyao, the president of Tianyu Group. Aren't you afraid that my husband will be unhappy if you rush in like this? The man with the mustache narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang didn't hesitate and took a big step back. Come on, you want to find a dog, right? Come in and find it. But I'm here to spend money. My husband gave me the card. He was also the one who told me to relax here. If you insist on coming in to look for it, I won't object. However, if you don't find the dog and cause me trouble, then I really don't mind telling my husband that this is how you treat your VIP customers. The mustache man still wanted to say something, but the person standing behind him took a step forward and said something to the mustache man. The man with a mustache stood there and stared at Su Qingsang. He didn't make any move to rush in, but he still had to say, We're just looking for a dog. Madam, please let us go in and take a look. I said, there are no dogs here. I'm a big man. How could I not know if a dog came in or not? Or could it be that you're doing this on purpose to make me unhappy? When she said this, the manager of the club also came over. He obviously knew that Su Qingsang was here with the limited VIP gold card. When he saw Su Qingsang, he nodded vigorously with an apologetic smile on his face. Sorry. Mrs. Hua, your subordinates are immature. They're not targeting you. It's just that this dog is really my boss's beloved pet, so we must find it. Please do my boss a favor and let my people in to take a look. Just one look. Don't worry. We promise not to disturb you. Su Qingsang stood still, obviously not intending to move away. The manager could only go further. Mrs. Hua, don't worry. Our boss and Mr. Hua also know each other. They are both people in the business circle of Rome City. I believe that even if Mr. Huo was here, he would give our boss face. Why don't you let us disturb you for a few minutes? Hearing what the manager said, Su Qingsang smiled and said, okay. Just a few minutes, right? It's okay. Come in and look for it. As she spoke, she took 2 steps into the room and then stood in front of the wardrobe casually. Go ahead. The club manager glanced at the mustache man. He came in with a few people to take a look around. The room was so big that it was easy to see if there was anyone hiding in it. The man stepped back and looked at Su Qingsang's position. Behind her was the wardrobe. The mustache man obviously wanted to look at the wardrobe. Su Qingsang smiled when she met his eyes. Sir, do you still want to search the wardrobe? Why? Do you suspect that your dog can run in by itself? Come and find. As she spoke, she pretended to pull the door of the wardrobe. The mustache man cleared his throat. No need. Sorry to disturb you. The club manager also nodded vigorously. Sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Hua. We will go to Mr. Hua's place to apologize another day. No need to apologize. Su Qingsang crossed her arms in front of her chest. I came here to relax. To put it bluntly, I came here to enjoy myself. Since you know that I disturbed you, why don't you leave? What? You don't want me to stay here anymore, do you? Is this how you do business? Sorry, we will leave now. We are really sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Hua. Please understand. As the club manager spoke, the mustache man was still staring at the wardrobe behind Su Qingsang. It was obvious that he wanted to open the wardrobe and search it again. His gaze made Su Qingsang even angrier. She took a step forward, her face full of anger for being disturbed. After the manager repeatedly apologized and said that all of Su Qingsang's expenses that day were free, he left with the mustache man and the others. Su Qingsang didn't relax because they were leaving. Instead, she kept standing in front of the wardrobe. Her face was always in an unhappy state, which made the man with the mustache turn around and look at her for the last time before he left without any more doubts. Su Qingsang looked casual, but only she knew how stiff she was and how nervous she was. When the last person left, she slowly walked up and closed the door. As soon as the door was closed, she leaned against the door and didn't move. Only she felt a layer of cold sweat on her back. Just now, she was really worried that the mustache man wouldn't give up and would insist on opening the wardrobe. She waited for a while to make sure that the sound outside was far away, then went forward and opened the wardrobe. Zhang Yichen walked out of the wardrobe. Thank you. You're welcome. Su Qingsang shook her head and looked at Zhang Yichen's clothes. He was also wearing black. They were looking for you just now. Yes. Can I ask, what did you do? Su Qingsang asked, then realized that she didn't ask. With Zhang Yichen's status, he couldn't say anything. Nothing. I took something from their boss. Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. Su Qingsang didn't ask anymore. The people outside the door hadn't left yet, and Zhang Yichen couldn't just leave like that. Looking at Su Qingsang, who seemed to be a little embarrassed, he thanked her very sincerely. You're welcome. Su Qingsang had already calmed down. She believed that if those people wanted to come back, they wouldn't do it now. I should thank you. You gave me a chance to use my identity to pressure people. Whether it was in Lin City or Rong City now, this was the first time she used her identity to pressure people. It was interesting to think about it. Zhang Yichen looked at her. This woman was undoubtedly very smart. She had predicted all the possible reactions of those people. I think Hu Jiniao won't mind you using his identity to pressure people. Of course. He might be more than happy to do so. Thinking of Hu Jinyao, Su Qingsang's lips turned up into a faint smile. If Hu Jinyao found out about what happened today, he might even help her vent her anger again. That guy hated it when people bullied her. When she thought of Hu Jinyao, her eyes softened. Her face, which was originally only 7 points, instantly turned into 10 points. Zhang Yichen looked at her face. For a moment, he couldn't move his eyes away. Sensing his gaze, Su Qingsang's smile immediately disappeared. She took a step back uncomfortably. How are you going to leave later? Why do I remember that they have surveillance cameras? My colleague broke the surveillance cameras. The time limit was 15 minutes. It had been 10 minutes since he came in. Speaking of which, he should leave now. But they are looking for you all over the world. I don't think it's easy for you to leave, right? Su Qingsang didn't want to be nosy. However, since he was here now, she might as well ask him something. After all, he was Hu Jinyao's uncle. It's okay. I have a way. While speaking, Zhang Yichen tried to keep his eyes on Su Qingsang's face. The bathrobe she was wearing was a little too big. Even though she pulled it tight, her delicate collarbones could still be seen. Also, she crossed her arms in front of her chest, which made her figure stand out. She had just been in the hot spring. Because of that, her skin looked beautiful and pink. She was as beautiful as a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. Zhang Yichen couldn't help but think of Su Qingsang in the hot spring. Her shoulders were smooth, and her skin was smooth. It turned out that the beauties in the books were real people in reality. Zhang Yichen clenched his hands and forced himself to look away. Su Qingsang didn't ask any more questions. Since Zhang Yichen said he had a way, she didn't need to worry about it. The two of them didn't say anything. They just stood there, facing each other. The silence was a little awkward. Realizing the situation in front of her, Su Qingsang took a step back, wondering why Shi Mengwan hadn't shown up yet. Zhang Yichen's jaw tightened when he saw what she was doing. He tried his best to ignore her evasive attitude. He told himself that she was married and was his niece's wife. Are you in the hot spring alone? Zhang Yichen saw the door open. He thought it was an empty room, so he rushed in. He thought he could find a chance to hide. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.